deeply cynical, right?
Oh shit, maybe that worked.
You can't possibly
Last try,
fathom
then I'll
that
give
someone
up.
is being sincere and hold an opinion that's different than yours. That every single person
Last try, then I'll
is
give up
out
on the
there
videos.
championing causes for some other
You found what?
ulterior purpose.
Oh, where was it?
No one could possibly believe the things that you also identify as a virtue, by the way. You are openly admitting that what I'm saying is virtuous.
Some of those were empty yesterday.
You're
I
saying
bet-
it's actually good.
Oh, I bet they filled some
It's
of them up.
morally, it's the morally correct position. But you can't fathom someone arriving at what you perceive as the morally
yes.
correct position and the virtuous
worked.
position
I have no
without
idea
some
what I
other
did different.
ulterior motive.
I just changed a bunch of settings.
I promise you, there
I'm
are
live on
people
YouTube
out
now.
there
Woohoo!
who are not like that. And perhaps the only reason
Yay,
why
go
you
me.
feel that way,
Okay, moving on.
perhaps the only reason why you feel that way is because of the spaces that you occupy on the internet. You only go and congregate around people who are
right, we're gonna
legitimately
take a
fucked
journey
up,
today.
like
That's what we're gonna do.
genuinely having a bad time, and their whole output is to try
That's
to
what we're
make
gonna do.
others also feel bad and feel shitty. And they're training you to believe. They're training you to fucking believe that anyone that says, "Hey, be kind to others," like it's fine. It's not gonna take. It's $0. It costs $0 to be nice to people, and to want what's best for others. Anyone that says shit like that must be disingenuous. I mean, look, I have my moments where I'm very angry, where I get very passionate, where I get very mad. There are plenty of moments where I'm not embodying the virtues, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of people, as a matter of fact, a lot of people are looking for those moments so they can clip a certain perspective.
I urge you not to succumb.
And like show the rest of the world the truth about me or something. Like, no human being is perfect. I'm certainly not. But again,
So in a rather shocking development.
Stop it. Video. What the
a
hell?
Jewish guy trying to insult me by calling me a hook-nosed yid is pretty ironic, don't you think? Yeah, looks identical, Sammy. They all have the same look. It's uncanny. 100% chance this guy calls Hassan Piker a vicious anti-Semite. He does. Whether you think Hassan is an anti-Semite or not, yes. Saying he spent his entire professional career combating anti-Semitism is absolutely hilarious. Gaslighting bullshit. Guy is so comically full of shit. Yeah. Always. Always.
Oh, God damn it.
Obnoxious men.
Date the Chads.
Yeah.
Chads are the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, the Stacy's going for the chat.
Exactly. The Stacys are the dizzy dumb girls dating the goofy jocks.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I came from one of those communities, and I'm proud to say I'm reformed now and active with Houston DSA. Gave me, friends, and myself a purpose. Thank you. Fuck yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That's why I do it. For all the fucking chirpers in the chat who are like, why do you even address these people? That's why, bro. That's why. A better future is possible for yourself. You just have to be able to seize it. You have to be able to snap yourself out of your normal existence that possibly is leading you down this like deep, dark pit of despair every single fucking day that you sit at home and rot and watch people and you're like, oh, I hate these fucking people. I hope they could also feel a fraction of the pain that I endure on a daily basis. I'm just going to go out there and fucking hurt them. I'm going to go out there and fuck.
Oh, I think another thing worth pointing out is he actually encourages people to participate in civic engagement. You know what I mean?
Okay? The pit of despair that I'm talking about, that's at the end of that pit of despair. And what's so funny is all of the people that are a part of his in-group, his closest associates and affiliates online, are probably on the internet after this guy gets arrested, calling him.
Let's see what else. Obviously, as a as a progressive, he's against the overwhelming use of military force by the United States in the Middle East.
But this is obviously the worst of the worst of the worst, right? Like that's the final level of the darkness, right? And when they get there, when they finally do it and then they kill themselves in the process, all of their closest associates go online and they joke about it. They joke about how much of a fucking loser or how Mexican the person was, you know? I see it all the fucking time. It's literally the same. It's the same fucking people. It's the same goddamn.
Oh, and if there's any doubts as to whether he is a good actor in the fight against rising authoritarianism, then the fact that they're constantly shitting on him on Fox News, and he's rumored to have been subpoenaed by the federal government for his humanitarian trip to Cuba. That should I don't know, there's too many beneficial aspects to what he says to be considered like anti-American, without it coming from a place of either intentional or unintentional ignorance or a place of bigotry. You know what I mean?
And how were you able to remember that?
Because I remember that was a very significant day.
Okay, what was that?
That was
Actually, you
when
know what? I'm gonna
Elliot
change the playlist.
Roger
I'm not gonna
decided to
I'm not gonna do what I was
essentially
gonna do. Never
commit
mind.
an uprising, a beta uprising, if you will,
Right.
against the
Now I'm changing my
Chads and the
playlist.
Stacys.
Okay. It was Elliot Roger who was the
Cop is laughing.
father. Of
Basically,
this.
the founding forefather
The
of
founding
the
forefather.
entire
Fluid.
movement.
Right. So explain to me this movement. What's this movement?
That's what happens when you don't
It's
plan.
basically a movement of
We call it
angry incels,
flexible
such
schedule.
as myself, who are unable to get laid. Therefore, we want
It's
to
clearly
overthrow the
has nothing to do with the
Chads,
fact that I have
which
no
would,
idea what I'm doing and
force
I
the
never planned.
Stacys to be forced to reproduce with the incels.
So that's just a short form for fellas who
Can't get laid.
Can't have sex. Right? Okay. And what happened in the Elliot Rogers uprising? What did he do?
I know he
Ugh, I'm
used
so
a,
sick of seeing JD
gun
Vance.
as well as a
He's going on a
vehicle
freaking
to,
book tour. Like,
convert the life status
dude, how
of
about you do
certain
something productive instead of just being
this dude
Trump's
has
bitch?
110% mental issues. Yeah, I know. No shit. But if he had a fucking healthy support system around him, there are plenty of people.
I actually don't know what I'm going to cover today. I'm just randomly picking videos that I haven't seen yet.
But they're lucky enough to not find themselves in this deep, dark pit of despair.
Unless you want to expand the vice president's power. Yeah, I really don't. I think, personally, I think we should go back to a system where the vice president is the runner-up in the presidential election. That's my opinion. I keep the power dynamic similar. You know what I mean? I'm okay with the power dynamic as them just being like the batter that's on deck. You know what I mean? The Senate stripped them of all their procedural duties. Yeah, I think it's funny how whiny MAGA was when Mike Pence didn't certify the election. Like, dude, it's a ceremonial role. Like, pay attention, jackass.
Productive use of his fucking time. Yeah. Oh, this is the guy who who drove the minivan, Alec Manassian. He
Like, they seriously
drove over.
They seriously wanted to hang him for not gargling Trump's balls on January 6th. Like, come on, man.
Around him, and he just like snapped himself out of this like the weird right-wing radical circles that he was online. He probably would not have acted out on these like unbelievably violent desires. He wouldn't have like snapped. He wouldn't have gotten to the point that he got to.
Oh, that's right. I don't know.
This guy was
I asked
diagnosed
you,
with autism as an autistic person as well. It's so clear this guy was
I don't know if you've seen it yet, but the new Spider-Man trailer. I'm gonna play that whether you've seen it or not because I want to watch it again.
from the same people that will bully him for being autistic. Well, those other people are also most likely autistic.
I'm an MCU fanboy.
individuals to death status,
Right.
only to carry the message that incels can't be oppressed. You could call it an incel rebellion.
Incel rebellion, exactly. Right. Yeah. Okay. And were these fellas active on 4chan?
Yes,
They were. Have you ever communicated with these fellas?
I actually have, as a matter of fact.
So what did you discuss with these?
Oh, did you watch the alt-right playbook video that I sent you on Discord a few days ago? That's okay if you didn't. I'm not too worried about it, but it's just kind of funny.
Southwest flight right now with dog shit Wi-Fi. I'm only hearing bits and pieces, but thanks for the watch. Shout out chat.
The VP could issue a point of order, refuse to count, and have the court settle it. Other than that, they're the only time the VP cannot count as if the ballots have been tampered with. Oh, man. Which is literally what they tried to do.
Be normal by the unfair standards of society.
But not.
I also didn't realize. I also didn't realize that there's a deeply anti-Semitic octopus at the top of this fucking TV. For the record,
The Chads or Stacy's.
Chads and Stacy's are actually above normies, or at least they think they're above.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. All right. So is it fair to say you've got Chads and Stacy's up here, normies down here, incels who believe they're being suppressed or repressed, and so as a result, to even the playing field.
Yes.
They convert the Stacy's and Chads from living to dead, and to
So
make
that we come out on top. But we do wish to subjugate them in order to make them understand that the
Oops.
right. So when you say subjugate,
Oh, man. I just realized you were like 8 when the first Iron Man movie came out, weren't you?
cells or
You probably don't have the same attachment to the MCU as I do.
okay, so you're saying things that I'm not
Ooh,
familiar
a
with.
Ta-Nehisi
Sorry,
Coates
so
interview.
technical-
Definitely
but
watching that.
He's a mascot, unfortunately.
Ta-Nehisi
there's an
Goats.
octopus related anti-Semitic trope chat. Yeah, but I'm also it's a deep cut. This is Greta Thunberg. Remember this is like a autism helper or something. It's like an octopus plushie that Greta Thunberg posed with one time, and the pro-Israel crowd made it seem like she was deeply anti-Semitic for it.
He's a mascot?
Yes.
Who is this 4chan? Oh, who
I never say this, but I feel for the cop. I mean, yeah.
is this 4chan? This 4chan.
He may have been just a system administrator.
Is there a new Pod Save the World video? Oh crap, I think I watched it already. Yeah, I sure did. What the heck?
But 4chan is, you can go on it right now, and the thing about it is
Explaining 4chan to a Foyd.
Ah, yes.
Oh,
4chan,
buddy.
the birth-
you know, I always find it fascinating that the
the
same
birth
people
of
that freak out about the
Gamergate.
octopus trope use it all day, every day when describing Iran. Yes.
Financially
Yes.
incentivized by Epstein.
I mean, Israel defenders deploy every Nazi trope. Every fucking Nazi trope against like Pax Islamica,
it's
for
not
example.
user-friendly by design. There's porn playing on the banner ads on the side to make up people that are uncomfortable about that uncomfortable right
Oh,
away and
is
to
there
get
a
off
new-
there. The user layout is also, it's not user-friendly. Like the
I
threads,
guess I
they
watched
look
this, but I don't
weird. The
remember
way
watching
stuff is
this. Huh.
stacked is not
I guess I'll throw it in there.
intuitive when you first see it. There's no usernames. Everybody's anonymous. So that's another factor to it, that you have complete anonymity and you can't have like post history or anything. So you can
Add
just say
it
the
to
most
the list.
inflammatory shit, which we found out in the
Add
Jeffrey
it to
Epstein
the
leaks.
list.
Like the creator of 4chan was talking to
I think
Jeffrey
my
Epstein.
goal is to get like,
and they have different
even though I
boards,
never make it
and they're kinda
through
like subreddits
4
on
hours of
Reddit.
video anymore, my goal is to get 4 hours of video tossed into
Yeah,
the
it's
playlist.
it's safe. It's like safe, edgy. Couple mass shootings
one
inspired
more.
here and
I'll watch
there. Safe, edgy anti-Semitism. Never actually impacting the halls of power. Never actually moving you in the direction of any sort of like productive. Like it's not safe for the average person, but it's safe for those in positions of power, right? Because if you're like a fucking billionaire, if you're a billionaire, you love that there is a fucking internet forum out there of individuals that are like, you know, engaging in conspiratorial thinking, but you can actually maneuver them into a much more productive way of conspiratorial thinking, constantly assuming, first of all, it's a place to contain this kind of nonsense. That's number one. Number two, in that area that you've contained these people, some of these are, you know, extremely online individuals. You can actually
one more video.
slowly
Just
but
wanna add one more
surely
video.
manipulate them, slowly but surely move
make
them in
sure
the
when-
direction of certain political
everyone leaves me for the
positions that
evening, I
are
got stuff
not
to
actually
watch.
harmful to societal elites. If you notice,
damn it.
none of these guys ever get mad at the rich.
Oh, let's see what we
Okay,
got
they
here.
get mad
No,
at
I don't
Jews,
want
they
that.
get mad at Muslims, they get mad at trans people, undocumented migrants. It's never those in positions of profound power. So yeah, this kind of, they get mad at women, right? It is a perfect incubator of anti-communist thought, a perfect incubator that moves away people from ever recognizing their class position, understanding that, you know, a lot of the people that they're actually shitting on have the exact same class position that they do, have the same exact class interest that they do. It's a great way. It's a great way to get the pedophilic elite billionaires off their backs.
But the worst one is called Pol, which is politically incorrect, and that's where all like the neo-Nazis and shit.
And sometimes they obviously make
so
this
it was definitely,
statement.
like you know, billionaires like funding this thing to create like division and like chaos. And like
Yeah,
this
sometimes they make it very, you know, obvious. Like when Asmongold literally said, when Asmongold straight up said, it's not the top 2% that's like responsible for all of the societal failures, the bottom 2%. Like that was incredible.
move
He's
that
just
up
giving the
higher.
game away. Guy who is literally a part of the top 1% of the 1%, telling all of these other working class folks that they are, you know, that their enemies are actually the bottom 2%.
like fake universe with all these like caricatures of like the Stacys and the Beckys or whatever. That became more real to them than reality, which they're not living in. They're just living on these forums. But yeah, it is like compartmentalizing and just like all of them are like, because I've had bad experiences
Wait.
with girls or dating or whatever. It's like, oh, there's no hope. It's like
I
the
don't
black
think-
pilled thing. Just like, oh, it doesn't matter. Everything
think
is
it added
fucking
my last
shit. And
video.
they're all like this. They're like isolated and
Motherfuckers.
neglected. And then they find this group where there's just like a pity party and they're all talking about how bad shit is. And they like all
maybe
relate
did-
to
oh,
each
yeah, this
other
needs to be higher.
about that. But there's also normal boards on there. Like the Moo board is just like for people sharing cool
Ta-Nehisi
music with
Ghosts.
each other and like torrents of like ripped files. And they just use that platform because it would be taken down for like copyright reasons on other websites. So a bunch of people into underground music like Death
Fortunately, I made my whole World of Warcraft guild Ron Paul supporters. I remember they got me to take the bait too. Jesus Christ.
grips would go on the Moo board, and then they don't go on the Pol
Oh,
board.
yeah.
There's another
I
4chan
am,
board called
I am fully on board with the idea that libertarianism was created for nefarious purposes. I don't even think that's a legitimate political ideology whatsoever. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's my opinion of that. He just said something about people on 4chan being like sucked into or focusing on Ron Paul or something. That's why I thought of it. Anyway. Oop. Anyway. On to the show. Spooderman.
What is happening to me? Did you miss me, Spidey? I'm losing my mind. I am totally out of control. I gotta fix whatever this is right now.
Final semester MIT.
Dad, who do you think is actually watching these?
Maybe someone.
Okay, well, bye, someone.
What the? Dr. Banner, you found a way to suppress mutating DNA, right?
If you see me with this stuff, run.
So could you get rid of the bad aspects but keep the good?
How would you decide what parts of nature are good or bad?
Sorry about that.
You're not one of my students, are you?
It appears we're faced with a threat we can't control. One we can't even see.
I'm glad they did a better job of either they did a better job of hiding spoilers this time around, or I did a better job of ignoring or avoiding finding them on the internet this time around. I don't know.
You're the only one who's immune to it. You're the only one who can sense it.
What do you think they're looking for?
Oh, see, you stumbled across my board. I'm not one of those weirdos, I swear.
He's a little weird. I'm MJ.
You two don't know each other?
Yo, Spider-Man, you okay? Did you get rid of that monster inside you?
Think I might go see how MJ's doing.
You're not gonna get away with this.
But he might.
I didn't know you could get that big.
Oh. I get it. They're in his head. Whoever the mysterious character is can get into people's minds. Because that's why Banner said, but he might. Because it wasn't Banner talking, it was the person controlling Banner. Ah, okay. I'm getting it.
But you're in danger. You just have to trust me.
I didn't catch that the first time around.
Fine.
This whole thing can get really scary.
Who the hell is that?
Who the hell are you?
Frank, please. I don't have anywhere else to go.
By the people who love you,
Just gonna let him go by himself?
love you because you're you.
If you're gonna do something, you better do it now.
Never forget that. No matter how powerful you become.
I miss you, May. Huh. All right, just give me a sec. Give me a sec. I'm not in high school anymore. Oh. Did you stretch? You a big stretcher? It's so good for you. You ready?
I gotta get
I
tickets.
urge you not to succumb to nihilism because
This is for. This is only intended to dispel the false claims of anti-Semitism.
there are many other crises out there, especially including the crisis that the Palestinian people face every day.
This was from over a year ago, I think, when he was actually allowed to go to London with the same political ideology that he has now, oddly enough.
And the truth matters and your voice matters, so continue to keep up the pressure. Great weather. Seriously. What's up, everybody? I'm Hassan Piker. I just did one of these talks at Cambridge University at Cambridge Union yesterday. And after seeing Oxford immediately after that, it feels like a quaint fishing village in comparison to what's going on here. Having said that, however, there was a lot of contest at Cambridge Union. And judging by how the Q&A session goes in the aftermath of this speech, I'm going to make up my assumption on whether the age-old conversation, whichever way that unfolds. Is Cambridge better than Oxford? Is Oxford better than Cambridge? We'll find out.
They were very ruthless over there. I'm just letting you know. They even said that apparently I was more controversial or more contentious than Ben Shapiro. So, it's interesting times. I gave a speech yesterday, and I didn't want to do the same exact speech here, so while I wrote that speech on the car ride from London to Cambridge, I wrote another one on the car ride from London to Oxford today. Both are going to be haphazard and put together, but it's a serious one, so bear with me. This is not something I normally do. I have the gift of gab. I talk all the time, 8 to 10 hours every single day, specifically on controversial, polarizing political issues, but today I'm going to try to streamline my thoughts a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you in this storied, deliberative hall, following the footsteps of much more credible and much more intelligent thinkers as nothing but a simple man. A simple man who understands right from wrong. And sometimes that's all that matters. In the words of my friend, the late, great Michael Jamal Brooks, there's nothing complicated about apartheid. There's nothing complicated. The morality is clear. If the roles were reversed and a captive Jewish population of 5 million were being systematically starved, sieged, and dominated, as its ancestral lands were being destroyed, there would be no confusion or complexity. It's super simple, he used to say. There's one group, Israel, that has enormous power. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East. It's backed by the United States, the most powerful country in the world. It acts on a population of people with total impunity.
Good news is my CPU and GPU are both running exceptionally cool now that I replaced the fan and reapplied the thermal paste. So if it freezes on me, kicks me out, then I know that wasn't the problem. So fingers crossed.
It is never held accountable for anything, so there's no symmetry in this relationship, period. That's why I don't think there's any need for obfuscation. No arguments of complexity, no reasoning for preemptive genocide. Israel is an apartheid state, and its inception was a violent one, with the displacement, the forced displacement of 700,000, which gave birth to a settler colonial entity that continues to dominate the lives of more than 5 million Palestinians. Its demographic concerns are never seen in the same lens that we view nationalist and fascist projects of the past. It also happens to be one of the most impressive nationalist projects the world has ever seen. From the revitalization of Hebrew as a language to finding a nation state for a revolutionary people who had been historically oppressed. Victim to countless pogroms, the Holocaust, Israel could have been a story of success and overcoming great odds. Except its inception was built around a vicious lie that this was a land without people for a people without land. And this lie was very quickly also countered by the likes of Albert Einstein, who was supposed to be the first president of Israel. He turned down that opportunity. Having appeared as a witness before the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry, established in 1945 to consider the issue of Jewish immigration to Palestine, Albert Einstein famously wrote, "I have served as a witness before the Anglo-American Inquiry Commission on Palestine for the sole purpose to act in favor of our just cause. I am in favor of Palestine being developed as a Jewish homeland,
Why is it over there?
but not as a separate state. It seems to me a matter for simple common sense that we cannot ask to be given the political rule over Palestine where 2/3 of the population are not Jewish. What we can and should ask is a secured binational status in Palestine with free immigration. If we ask more, we are damaging our own cause. And it's difficult for me to group that our Zionists are taking such, And it's difficult for me to grasp that our Zionists are taking such an intransigent position which can only impair our cause. And his fears were very quickly realized. That was in 1946 when he wrote that. Only 2 years after, in April 1948, 2 Zionist militias, Irgun and Stern Gang, entered the Palestinian village of Deir Yassin and slaughtered hundreds of Palestinian men, women, and children. Those who were not slaughtered or tortured initially were paraded in the back of trucks in the streets of Jerusalem, only to be executed later. This was a warning for all of the other Arab villages of what's to come. This was a calculated atrocity to carry out the forced expulsion of 700,000 Palestinians from their homes, never allowing them to return. This is what is known to Palestinians as
okay, crawling
the
crabs.
Nakba,
Yeah, that's me. I admitted. Hold on.
Einstein wrote a letter.
I admitted it was me, as such. I'm telling you, man, I'm like, I don't even know if it works or not. I don't know if it adds a viewer, but I had forgotten or like lost the login information to this that Twitch account, and plus I wanted to. I just came back and saw that. Yeah, so even though I had that Twitch account, I wanted to make one like something that I would hang on to for a while, because this was when I actually wanted to start streaming. Like, I had created that just to watch other streamers. But then when I saw that I needed to get my average viewer count up, I was like, you know what, let me try it. So yeah, I log in and watch under my alt account. I don't know if it counts or not. I don't know if they determine it based on IP address, because they can see it's coming from the same location. So I don't know if it works or not, but why not try?
At this time. In his letter, he said, when a real and final catastrophe should befall us in Palestine, the first responsible for it will be the British. Sorry.
I have to.
He was right.
Green
and the
is the new
second
blue.
responsible for it will be the terrorist organizations built up from our own ranks. I am not willing to see anybody associated with those misled and criminal people. Now, the people that carried out these acts of horror would later become prime ministers of Israel. The Nakba was, in the words of historian Ilan Pape, a master plan for the mass expulsion of the Palestinian population, also known as Plan D or Plan Dalit. Hundreds of thousands were expelled before Israel's so-called War of Independence had.
If I had a larger stream of funds, I would be tempted to do what other streamers do and get just like a month's worth of bots to come in and watch, and then like dump them, just to inflate the numbers. But I don't have the enough finances to do that.
Even started. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, to use Pape's words, orchestrated an ethnic cleansing of Palestine. These were not merely nationalists or settlers run amok. This was clearly defined state policy. Einstein considered the early Zionist militias to be violent, and Menachem Begin's Herut, a political party closely akin to its organization, methods, political philosophy, and social appeal to the Nazi and fascist parties. Einstein understood the dangers that nationalism of this sort presented. After all, he'd fled Nazi Germany. He had seen it firsthand. Nowadays, this sort of analysis is met with tremendous resistance. Given our comforts living in the heart of empire, we focus more on the feelings of those in the West rather than the violence that our tax dollars contribute to. Israel could not carry out its occupation without unlimited Western weapons and Western support. This is where propaganda to the West plays a very important role. Facing centuries of violence, Israel uses the very real fears of anti-Semitism to reinforce the necessity of a Jewish ethno-state, often claiming that no Jew would ever be safe if it wasn't for Israel. This is something that you hear all the time. You even heard it from my demented geriatric president, Joe Biden. He said that as well, this ridiculous statement. The United States is home to almost the same number of Jewish people as Israel. So when Joe Biden says something like that as the President of the United States of America, although he thinks this is servicing the defense of Israel and America's interest in Israel, I see that as a veiled threat, an abdication of his responsibility to American Jewish citizens, our brothers and sisters. Israel is no more a champion of Judaism than ISIS is a champion of Islam. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism.
Facts.
Saudi Arabia's decades-long blockade against Yemen is worthy of criticism. If someone were to consider that Islamophobic to say,
He sounds a
everyone
bit
would
different when
laugh at you.
speaking in a public, making public
America's
appearances as opposed
unjustifiable
to
and illegal occupation and invasion
dealing
of
with
Iraq
Twitch streamers. What
was
you
not
say?
done at the behest of Christianity. If someone were to turn around and say, George W. Bush said, God told me to invade Afghanistan and Iraq, that's actually a Christian act, most people would laugh at you. Criticizing that would not be considered being Christian phobic. This is not anti-Christian bigotry. Claiming that a religious and ethno-supremacist apartheid state that is currently engaging in a genocide has anything to do with Judaism is unimaginably anti-Semitic, however. This is precisely why this rhetorical tactic is applied by those who cynically wish to defend Israel.
I wanted to remind Liberty, we started a conversation with his Hassan, so I felt the need to I don't know. One of the I guess one of the primary goals that I wanted to start actually streaming was to offer different perspectives to people that may not get them otherwise. So the reason I'm showing more of his material is to dispel this the perception that is that's presented in the perception of him that is presented in mainstream media, because I don't feel that it's justified. So I accept that you're not a fan of his, but I think it's important to. I still think it's important to broaden perspectives. Like I mentioned before, the same reason why I watch, the same reason why I feel it's important to watch, YouTube channels like The Bulwark, which are Republican or former Republican Never Trumpers, is the same reason why I think it's important for you to watch political commentators like Hassan Piker. You know what I mean? Because I feel that gap in political ideology between me and The Bulwark is the same between you and Hassan Piker. So that's why I think it's important. And that's one of it fits into the goal I had with, starting the stream, starting streaming. So I hope that's acceptable. If not, sorry, not sorry? I don't know. No, I guess I would be sorry. I don't know. Anyway, back to the show.
And those who seek to use criticisms of Israel as a cynical ploy to traffic in anti-Semitic rhetoric. Anti-Semitism is a canary in the coal mine of fascism. It's one of the oldest bigotries that has caused those of the Jewish faith a tremendous amount of pain. From pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have always been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for instability and economic volatility people in power cause. A resilient, nascent anti-Semitism is a constant threat, especially as economic instability makes those in power seek out old targets. They're not very creative, usually. They just always rehash the same propaganda over and over again. This is precisely the reason why I am terrified of the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. The conflation is dangerous. Valid criticisms against the state, especially as all of the violence is unfolding, and everyone can see it, valid criticisms against the state committing these atrocities and tying it back to Judaism is a cynical ploy to stop all matter of conversation is truly terrifying. And I think it directly causes anti-Semitism to fester. Perhaps this is why I'm often asked the question, Hassan, why does America have so much loyalty to Israel? And I think there are a lot of people who ask this question because they genuinely want to understand. They don't get it. But then there are some who ask it because they want me to say anti-Semitic things. They want me to say, oh, because Jews control the media or the government. This is not true. This is not the reality at all. But the very fact that people have that resilient, nascent, unexamined anti-Semitic tendency is truly terrifying, especially in this moment, because it's a real question that can lead people down the rabbit hole of anti-Semitic conspiracies about Jewish control over the American state and media. Simply put, Israel is an asset. It is an unsinkable aircraft carrier in a resource-rich region. It is one of the most valuable allies that the United States has for its interests in the region. At different points in time, Israel has served different purposes for the United States, its primary benefactor. It's been a Cold War ally. It's been a punisher of misbehaving Middle Eastern oil states. It's also been a partner in Western espionage. This is why I often jokingly state that even if every single American Jew was a card-carrying anti-Zionist overnight, America would still continue to have the exact same Israel policies. And that is absolutely the truth, especially when you look at the latest J Street poll that was conducted on American Jews. 70% of them wanted to halt arms transfers to force Israel to commit to a ceasefire in Gaza. Either Joe Biden didn't hear that, he didn't see that, or he didn't care. Or maybe this has nothing to do with the wishes of American Jews. After all, there was another study that was conducted leading up to the election. And for American Jews, it was the 9th out of the top 10 priorities. Israel was the 9th priority. Because this trope of dual loyalty is oftentimes applied by those who are defending Israel who think that they're actually being pro-Jewish, when in fact they're not doing that. It's the exact opposite. But contrary to popular sentiment, anti-Semitism is also not the guiding principle of Palestinian resistance. They are singularly focused on ending a 76-year-old colonial occupation. The standard of violence is always set by the colonial entity. The maintenance of apartheid is an unimaginably bloody affair. Checkpoints, separate roads, indefinite military detention of Palestinian children, refusal of permits to build water wells, wholesale destruction of villages, letting rabid right-wing settlers operate like the Klan in the occupied West Bank, and offering military protection to their campaigns of ethnic displacement are all parts of the often invisible violence that plays a role in the daily existence of Palestinians. But because it's systematized, we do not have that same attitude towards this kind of violence because it's state policy. It's not a non-state actor conducting these affairs. So we read it very differently. Almost a century of domination, land grabs, and ritualistic humiliation of an indigenous population is always going to be violent. And the retaliation to that violence will always increase as the captive population becomes more desperate. The notion that Palestinians are not simply seeking an end to the occupation, but instead operating with an ancient desire of anti-Semitism might be a comfortable narrative that feeds into people's cognitive dissonance. But there are plenty of former Israeli leaders who disagree with you. And I want to give you some quotes. From Ami Ayalon. He's the former head of the Israeli intelligence agency Shin Bet. Not exactly a guy who's card-carrying, woke, college campus, pro-Palestinian encampment guy. He famously declared to ABC that if he were Palestinian, he would fight against Israel and would do everything to achieve liberty. Now, his words are not uncommon amongst many of Israel's former leaders. Ehud Barak said something similar as well. But the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, also understood the need for Palestinian resistance despite his dedication to destroying it. He stated, "If I was an Arab leader, I would never make terms with Israel. That is natural. We have taken their country. Sure, God promised it to us, but what does that matter to them? Our God is not theirs. We come from Israel. It's true, but that was 2,000 years ago. And what is that to them? There has been anti-Semitism, the Nazis,
That's actually not
Hitler,
true.
Auschwitz. But what?
Jews and Muslims
Was
actually
that
do
their
worship the
fault?
same God.
They only see one thing. We have come and stolen their country. Why should they accept that? We do not judge the violence that unfolds in retaliation to the systematic enforcement of brutal practices, whether it be slavery or apartheid in any other context. The Nat Turner Rebellion, the Haitian Revolution, the violence that unfolded in the liberation of Algeria, the militancy of the ANC. These are all very violent endeavors, but they can never match up to the structural and standardized violence which exists in the maintenance of chattel slavery, in the maintenance of colonialism, and in the maintenance of apartheid. So if you were to tell me that the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was inappropriate or too violent, I would laugh at you. I would have you committed. That would be an insane thing to say. So, in the face of countless atrocities that have unfolded over this past year, child mutilation, drone copters sniping children, drone copters playing the sounds of wailing children seeking out help in an effort to lure out unsuspecting Palestinian civilians with the express purpose of murdering them. Bombing virtually every aspect of civil life in Gaza, the world's largest open-air prison. I think it's time that we have to have an honest conversation about Israel, because there are a lot of intelligent people in here, and if we don't have an honest conversation, we're never going to be able to solve this problem. This is especially a volatile time as well, because right now we are facing a crisis of fascism in the Western world. These nascent movements are growing all across Western liberal democracies. You have the Reform Party here in the UK, you have Donald Trump in the United States of America, who is significantly more violent in both his rhetoric and much more vindictive than the first time around. You have the AfD in Germany, you have Meloni in Italy, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, and so on and so forth. So in this time, we need to make sure that we can restore confidence in legacy publishers and in mainstream media, and yet they have time and time again dropped the ball. A lot of people, especially in the democratization of media, especially with inventions like TikTok and social media, can personally see exactly what's going on in places like Gaza in a way that they never were able to do so before. And when you see something that's going on, and the immediate contextualization offered by oftentimes an IDF guy on CNN does not match with that reality of child mutilation, baby murder, things of that nature, you start losing faith in these mainstream institutions. And I'm truly terrified of what is to come if we don't fix this problem. And it's on all of us to play a role in speaking the truth. So I urge all of you to not give in to pessimism, to not give in to your nihilistic tendencies and think, well, we've done our encampments and the schools did not respond positively. They're still giving money to Elbit Systems or whatever. I urge you not to succumb to nihilism, because there are many other crises out there, especially including the crisis that the Palestinian people face every day. And the truth matters and your voice matters, so continue to keep up the pressure, because there are decades where nothing happens and there are weeks where decades happen. Free Palestine.
Hello and welcome back to Strict Scrutiny, your podcast about the Supreme Court and the legal culture that surrounds it. We are your hosts today. I'm Kate Shaw.
And I'm Leah Littman. This is, alas, another Just the Two of Us episode. We are without Melissa Murray today. But fear not, the Department of Justice may have beclowned themselves just enough that we think we have some gags even without Melissa jokes and humor. Okay, so today we're going to be covering the opinions that the Supreme Court managed to release.
See, I was still thinking about you,
not
Liberty.
that many. So most of it is going to be a smorgasbord of news that
Make sure to add
includes
Supreme Court content.
judges going wild, as in Farrell, the Department of Justice doing a lot of oopsies, and the White House signaling that it basically views all of anti-discrimination law as unconstitutional.
Oops.
More precisely, it appears to think that conventional anti-discrimination law is unconstitutional because anti-discrimination law is itself discrimination. As always, it will make a lot of sense, and we will explain it.
Two things. One, when you said it is just the two of us, it sounded the way you the rhythm of your voice saying just the sounded like you were saying this is a Just the Tip episode, and I just want to that it is not.
I was honestly thinking of the Just the Two of Us song as I was saying it, like in that rhythm.
Yes. Okay, well, why not both? And yes, as Leah said, the DOJ has been very busy this week. We will explain, but does it sort of feel to you like there's this little bit of a gap because the Supreme Court is taking its sweet time and issuing like the horror show of decisions to come? And so DOJ has seized the opportunity to kind of step into the breach. Anyway, we will elaborate. And because we will spend a fair bit of time talking about the Department of Justice, including what prosecutors should not be doing, we're going to end this episode with a segment about what they should be doing. And that is a segment with a first-time Strict Scrutiny guest that we cannot wait to share with you. So if you are wondering what can be done to check federal law enforcement and their overreach and protect our democracy in the lead up to the election, please tune in for that last segment.
I feel like I lost all my
And
viewers.
now to Supreme Court opinions. So we got 3 opinions last Thursday. None of the big ones. This means there are now 20 opinions
Maybe you guys are
left
just sick of listening
in
to me.
argued cases and
Like, no, don't
potentially
reply,
just
don't reply,
2
then
weeks
he'll talk.
left of the term. That's
go with the
going to
video.
make for a
And you know what? That's fair.
completely bananas next 2 weeks and possibly more if they go into the week of June 29th. It seems like they are likely to start adding opinion days, so brace yourselves for that and possible bonus episodes to go along with those good times. I just want to say, like, what is taking them so long? Because I wrote an updated version of Lawless while you guys were doing shit, and it's actually out tomorrow. So if you are looking for something to
that's
read,
right.
and it's
I got
in the
that book as a
absence of
graduation
Supreme
present. I
Court
need to read it.
opinions,
I completely
you can
forgot.
get the paperback version
Add that
of
to my to-do
Lawless
list.
out tomorrow. Just an FYI.
It is an antidote both to the Supreme Court's bad decisions and also to the absence of their bad decisions. It will cure all your ailments.
Why not both?
The paperback and its new material and newly lighter format, for easy shoving in your shoulder bag on your bicycle, wherever you're going.
Easy breezy beautiful, the flawless version of Lawless.
Exactly. But just in terms of the kind of opinion pace issue, so people who've been following this for a long time will, I think, know, but maybe sort of newer listeners don't realize, like, it is, the end of the Supreme Court term is always insane, but they are really concentrating so many huge cases in the last 2 weeks of the term. Like, gird your loins, hydrate and rest. It's going to be a wild stretch. And as Leah said, it could be the next 2 weeks and they're just going to get a ton of, just dump tons of them on us in like 3 or 4 opinion days. Or they could go into the week that ends on July 4th, which they typically really try to avoid doing, but I don't know if they can get everything out before then. So it will either be 2 or possibly 3 more weeks of this. I guess marathon, not a sprint, is the TLDR. Okay. On to the 3 opinions that we did get last week. The first, Abu Uomo versus United States, is a case in which the court unanimously held that a defendant who was charged with knowingly falsifying a document with intent to obstruct a federal investigation had to be charged in the district where the alleged falsification occurred rather than where the federal investigation was located. So here, the defendant, who was a former Twitter employee, allegedly took a bribe from the Saudi government in exchange for giving them information about Saudi dissidents and their activity on the platform, and then made a false invoice to support his claim that the payment was just like for consulting services. He made this false invoice in Seattle. So he was actually being questioned by federal officials, said it was just payment. They said, do you have any supporting material? And he went upstairs and printed out a allegedly fake invoice. So all that happened in Seattle. But he was charged in California, where the investigation was based. And here, the court, in a unanimous opinion authored by Justice Kagan, said that this California charging was improper. He had to be charged in Washington.
It is possible that this case might affect DOJ's ability to continue to persecute
I think this was a
Rhode
9-0
Island
decision.
hospital for providing gender-affirming care. Recall that DOJ is using a Texas district court to issue subpoenas to the Rhode Island hospital, maybe saying it's investigating this from Texas, and the Texas district judge went along with it, issuing an anti-suit injunction that purports to forbid the Rhode Island hospital or patients from filing to challenge this conduct anywhere other than the Texas District Court or Fifth Circuit. At a minimum, the Supreme Court's decision suggests that any prosecution resulting from this, perhaps none, right? The investigation and prosecution might be the point. But any prosecution would have to be in Rhode Island.
Yeah. And hopefully there's no criminal prosecution. And
Yes.
I gather there are statutory venue issues that are distinct from the kind of general constitutional venue issues.
Can I
an
get a
issue in the
check?
case
You
we
guys
just
still with
talked
me,
about.
or did
But
everyone
the
leave
kind
me?
of high level observation that there's something troubling about DOJ, in one place seeking to target conduct that happens somewhere totally different, does seem,
W
at
in the
least
chat,
to have
a Y,
echoes of the
a Z,
Rhode
I
Island
don't care.
situation where this Texas
A.
district judge and DOJ together are trying
to make
affect
sure
activities in Rhode Island.
I'm still
Okay,
alive?
next case, Keithley versus Buddy Ayers Construction, Inc. is a case involving this situation where a debtor who files for bankruptcy might lose their ability to pursue a potential tort claim because they didn't list that tort claim as part of the bankruptcy estate.
Okay. Says you guys are in here. Hold on. Okay. Yep, I'm still live. Okay. I'm just being ignored. Fair enough. I'll shut up. I will shut up now.
So the bankruptcy code has a lot of parts of it. One
Back
of
to
them
the video.
requires debtors to list as part of an estate, quote, claims against third parties, whether or not the debtor has filed a lawsuit or made a demand for payment. Here, the debtor filed for bankruptcy, then was in an accident, then filed a personal injury lawsuit growing out of that accident, and informed bankruptcy counsel that he was doing so, but the bankruptcy court was never informed. The defendant in the tort suit filed to dismiss the debtor/tort plaintiff's suit on the ground that the debtor hadn't disclosed it to the bankruptcy court 18 months into the litigation. And the Supreme Court said that the right inquiry in this case, which wasn't the inquiry that the lower court had used, is to ask whether the totality of the circumstances suggests that this omission was inadvertent or mistaken.
We also got a very interesting federal courts opinion, and by interesting, I mean another opinion that makes a muck of federal courts' private rights of action and statutory interpretation. Only bright side here was a dissent by Justice Jackson defending consideration of legislative history and trying to reorient, the enterprise of statutory interpretation. So in this case, FS Credit Opportunities versus Sava Capital, the court held that the Investment Company Act does not provide a private right of action, which is the legal authorization for an individual or entity to bring suit, for private litigants to challenge contracts that allegedly violate the act. The opinion by Justice Barrett leans heavily on an opinion by the great man himself, Antonin Scalia, that narrowed the availability of private rights of action, which he had said must be created by Congress. And because Scalia's, and now the court's, method of interpreting what Congress has done is a wooden form of textualism that asks, did Congress use the words private right of action? They concluded there was no private right of action here. Now that's a little bit of an exaggeration. They didn't actually require Congress say the magic words private right of action, but close to it. There has to be rights creating language that focuses on a particular class of people. And if Congress explicitly created another remedy, as it did here by giving the Securities and Exchange Commission enforcement authority, then the court infers there's no private right of action.
So Leah said the opinion leans on the great man, Justice Scalia. It definitely does that. It also leans on him not just as jurist, but also, author of treatises. There's this treatise by Scalia and Garner, Reading
As brooding
Law.
omnipresence in the sky, authority on all
Scalia,
things.
That's right. Yes, it uses him in all those ways. Also, Judge Easterbrook's statutes domain, another sort of, I don't know, foundational text in textualism. But it feels to me like these are some pretty dated citations here, Justice Barrett. Like, these very tired critiques of a caricatured version of legislative history. It's improper, it's undemocratic for us to read things that committees of Congress wrote or that were said in the course of considering statutes or amendments. These are critiques that have been around for decades. I feel like they're actually more interesting recent sort of like discussions in statutory interpretation that don't really go mentioned at all. But there's also one thing that's a little bit of like a kind of in the weeds observation, but if you'll indulge me, I want to quickly make it. So the opinion uses statutory history, like amendments to a statute, and reads significance into those amendments. Here's what Congress was trying to do with amending the statute. That is actually trying to divine legislative intent, which is also what legislative history is supposed to speak to. And I'm not sure Justice Barrett quite realizes that she's not really doing anything very different when she is assigning meaning to Congress's, again, changing or retaining statutory language, you know, that doesn't feel very, very different from doing legislative history. I was thinking about this because Anita Krishnakumar has a forthcoming book about textualism.
If you think I'm awesome, do not respond in the chat.
And has, I think, a really convincing argument that much of the time when the court uses this statutory history, it's not really very different from the way the court uses legislative history. But of course, the great man would say statutory history was okay and legislative history was not, and so she is just trotting those canards out. In any event, I find it a pretty maddening opinion. The three Democratic appointees agreed, although to different degrees. The principal dissent, the one that found the majority opinion the most maddening, is by Justice Jackson, who, after concluding that text, structure, and statutory history support a private right of action, also explains that properly contextualized legislative history does too, and as Leah already alluded to, gives this really forceful defense of considering that legislative history. Justice Kagan didn't join those portions of the Jackson dissent, wrote a very short, separate dissent, basically saying her views on legislative history fall somewhere between the majority and the dissent's views, but that she generally agrees with the dissenters that even without legislative history, other material makes clear that there is a private right of action here.
The observation that the majority opinion is relying on these old sources of textualism is interesting because to me it just kind of reinforces a sense in which at this point this is just dogma, right? Like you have to believe a particular thing, right? It doesn't matter how that debate has evolved. You just cite the foundation.
New record. New record achieved in less than 2 hours. I've bored everyone. Look at me go. I don't even think I was this let down, even on my first stream. So sad. I have to cry myself to sleep now. Look what you guys did to me. How dare you?
Texts, and
you should feel bad.
Then you're in the club and you're doing the right thing. And it's just so silly.
Right. And you throw in doing legislative history is like picking your friends out of a crowd.
Yes.
You know, like we need to update this.
Pissed off Liberty and I'm bored Angel. There's like the only two viewers I get.
Interesting.
I know. Yeah.
And I don't even know.
Speaking of interesting, though, Justice Jackson's dissent. We can't read the entirety of it, but you should. Ideally, with Doja Cat's Boss Bitch playing in the background. Just a few lines to highlight. Quote: "The reports, as in the legislative history reports, say what they say." She adds, unable to explain this compelling evidence of Congress's intent, the majority pivots to arguing that I ignore the most relevant portions of the legislative history. Parenthesis, I welcome the majority's close reading of the reports. Yes, girl. She also describes analyzing legislative history as a, quote, worthy and necessary effort because it prevents the preferences of judges from supplanting the will of the people. Ever the pro-democracy justice. And then she asks what I just think is the most devastating question, which is, quote, what interest does it really serve to blind ourselves to the congressional record when we interpret Congress's handiwork? Who benefits from that? There's no flattering or straightforward answer to such questions. I just love that she has this fight in her.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like, I mean, I can't tell if it's because we're sort of steeped in these debates that we sort of see just like how spicy the exchange, I mean, on both sides is, but it's not a friendly disagreement, I would say, between Barrett and Jackson here. And she's also like, I just think, now I don't know, I think Kagan, just actually does feel differently about legislative history and statutory interpretation in general. But I just feel like it could be tempting, if you were Justice Jackson, to just say like, the legislative history fight is not one that we're going to win in my lifetime. And so like, let's, I don't know, pick other battles. And I actually think that she is principled and right, not in saying some committee report should decide definitively what a statute means, but in just saying it is crazy and dogmatic, as you said, Leah, to just refuse to put on these blinders as this article of faith. Like, we won't look at that stuff. And so she is just not willing to, let this one go. And I too really appreciate it.
Strict Scrutiny is brought to you by Americans United for Separation of Church and State. The Trump administration's excessive Christian nationalist rhetoric is only building as we move toward the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence.
While we are on the topic of SCOTUS opinions, let's continue on with some judicial crimes. That was my attempt to doing a Melissa Murray-esque segue. I'm not sure how well it worked, but we press on. Okay, and here we're talking about literal, actual crimes. Not using the sort of hyperbole that we sometimes are prone to when discussing what the court does. These are literal, actual crimes. And if you somehow missed this story, let us bring you up to speed. Last week, Judge Ryan Nelson on the U.S. Court of Appeals, this is a Court of Appeals judge, was charged with misdemeanor battery. He was appointed to the bench by Donald Trump during the first Trump administration. He's on the Ninth Circuit, and he was actually on the panel that stayed the district court's injunction that had blocked the president's federalization and deployment of the National Guard against, remember this, the Portland chicken, the Portland frog. Okay, the National Guard was not explicitly deployed against those adversaries, but they did have to face the Guard when the Guard was deployed in Portland. So the majority so there was a panel that he sat on. That panel had blocked the injunction because that the lower court had issued, because the panel concluded that the president had a colorable basis for deploying the National Guard, given the very serious crisis that the Portland frog presented. It's not what they said, just the crisis in general. But Judge Nelson concurred to go way, way further and basically to say the president's decision to deploy the National Guard was not reviewable by judges, full stop, that the president could just terrorize the country at whim and judges were powerless to do anything about it.
Speaking of terrorizing people at their whims, let's watch the video of the events that led to Ryan Nelson being charged with misdemeanor battery.
I've been here for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You're an asshole. Crazy. What an asshole. What an asshole.
So I watched it and I had a little bit of a hard time, sort of figuring out exactly what happened. Do you feel like you know it well enough to should we describe it for the?
Yeah. So at least what I gleaned from the video is, first, Ryan Nelson can't park for shit, right? He's basically
his car is very angled into another spot.
Parking lines.
That's true.
And another truck pulls up in a spot that's adjacent to one of the spots that Ryan Nelson's truck is kind of occupying. And it sounds or looks like the person who pulled up was like, "Can you park?" or something. And the judge's response to this was to grab the glasses off the guy's face and hurl them into the air, from what I can tell.
There's also some seeming to kind of stalking, following around the area surrounding the parking spaces. So we should say, there's no audio. We don't know what words, if any, were exchanged after this parking. It's not as though the cars came anywhere close to actually coming into physical contact. So whatever the predicate was not that that would justify a federal judge knocking glasses off of someone's face if that someone had sideswiped him, but that definitely did not happen, at least as far as the video seems to reveal.
So free speech, they'll yank your glasses off your face when you say things they don't like.
It seems, again, from what you can see in this video sans audio, like an absolutely unhinged reaction by a sitting federal judge who has now been criminally charged with misdemeanor. I think it's both battery and maybe destruction of property. So, I think that judges behaving badly in very different ways has been a theme of the last couple of weeks on this podcast.
Indeed. So in addition to judges wilding out, the last week the Department of Justice and the White House were also on one. So what we're about to talk about actually happened at the end of the previous week, but the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit heard oral argument in the case challenging the president's destruction of the
Someone joined
East
2 minutes
Wing
ago. I hope you're still
slash
there.
Construction of a Monster Energy drink
I hope you stick around and
branded
ask a question.
UFC cage. I cannot believe that
Let
is
me know
a
what you got.
sentence that is now utterable.
And
I'm desperate.
also, can I, if people haven't
Desperate
seen
for
it,
viewers.
it's not.
You have to look at it.
It looms over the entirety of the White House. It is so
My 2 regulars are
indescribably
ignoring me.
massive and hideous and gaudy, and there's this just trashy, weird, almost disco lighting. Sounds fun. It's not disco lighting.
No.
What is it? It's like menacing flashing lights that travel up and down this enormous dome of a cage. So there's a lawsuit.
Yeah, and here is what the Department of Justice had to say about the federal court's ability to stop the executive branch from destroying stuff.
The government decided very quickly and bulldoze the Statue of Liberty, the people whose ancestors, that was the first thing they saw coming to this country. But the government moved too fast. Nothing can be done.
I think that's right. Yes.
Kind of hard to make out, but basically, the federal government lawyer was taking the position that plaintiffs can only stop the executive branch from bulldozing things if plaintiffs get an injunction before any bulldozing happens. And to which Judge Millett, judge on the D.C. Circuit, asked the federal government lawyer, so does that theory apply to the Statute of Liberty? If the government starts to bulldoze the Statute of Liberty before anyone can file to stop them, there's nothing that can be done? To which the federal government lawyer basically says, yeah, I don't care. Do you? No, it was just basically a yes, but same thing. Struck me as pretty fitting that DOJ would take the position that actually, yes, they can destroy the Statute of Liberty if they do it before anyone obtains an injunction to stop them. She is a woman, after all, and when you're the president, they just let you do it.
It's so true. And I have to say, because Trump ruins everything good, I like the Statue of Liberty, so he probably wants to ruin that too. But, he brought his very, very bad and destructive mojo to Madison Square Gardens last week, clearly causing the Knicks to lose the 3rd game of the NBA Finals. Yeah, I wouldn't rule anything out, including him turning his sights on Lady Liberty. He got very booed in MSG, and I don't think he liked it. And I think that he is plotting his revenge on New York. And so, I don't know, take the statue down completely, coat her in gold. I wonder if that's on the table. Put some kind of My Pillow sponsored water park on her or on Ellis Island. It's just the desecration of these important national symbols and locations seems to sort of no sort of bottom. Anyway, that's what he's done to the White House with this monster drink branded cage on the South Lawn. And I'm not sure what his sights will be set on next. Wait, I think this just broke before we sat down to record. But have you seen the reports that there is algae blooming in the reflecting pool that he has also decided to take on as a pet project? Again,
nature is
good.
trying to send us a message, and thus far we have refused to hear it.
I really wonder what sort of fungus could grow on the White House lawn/cage.
If this is the beginning of a Last of Us style virus, wouldn't be surprised.
We brought this on
Would
ourselves.
not be surprised. Exactly. In other news that really bridges the divide between hilarious and horrifying, we were also treated to the release of the transcripts from the grand jury proceedings in the Broadview 6 case. This, of course, is the indictment of the protesters who were demonstrating outside of the Broadview Immigration Detention Center during Operation Midway Blitz. All of the charges were dismissed after the court indicated she would review the grand jury transcripts even after the government reduced the charges to misdemeanors rather than felonies. And the judge at the hearing dismissing the charges indicated that what she saw in those transcripts was shocking. And listeners, she did not exaggerate. There are 3 transcripts because, as we now know, even though DOJ tried to conceal this fact from the judge, DOJ had to present this case to
the drivers of
multiple
this game
grand
are
juries
freaking idiots.
before
Why?
it could
Why are they all-
obtain an indictment.
Every lane
Okay,
can
so
turn.
now we've actually seen the text, and the very
You don't
first
have to be in the middle
transcript
lane.
starts off with one prosecutor saying
Frickin-
the
this must
other
be
prosecutor
Texas.
will vouch for her. As we mentioned when this story first started to come out, vouching is one of the things that prosecutors categorically cannot do in front of the grand jury. There is
How
a
about this?
literal rule against
We'll do this,
vouching.
you
So
dumbasses.
what does this prosecutor start off with? By saying, quote, Matt, that's the other prosecutor, will
No going
vouch
straight.
for me. I
Everyone
said I
has to
want to
turn
go in
now.
front of the grand jury because I know you and I
you
trust
go.
you.
Every
and you
lane's
know
a turning
me
lane
and
now.
you trust me. And I would never ask you to charge somebody if I didn't think there was probable cause.
No, that didn't do it. Okay.
Textbook, trust me, I'm a prosecutor. I've got the evidence, so just indict. I'm honestly impressed that
Okay, how
the
about
vouching
no left
was
turns?
done in such an explicit sort of, stringer bell kind of prohibited way. Like, no, you don't take notes or say I'm vouching in the face
While
of a clear,
vouching before the grand jury.
You could literally find this if you're like, was there vouching? And you control F'd the word vouch, you hear her saying it. So, it's like on law school exams where the person is named P, plaintiff, or D, defendant. Here it is V for voucher.
There were many highs and lows in these transcripts. For me, I think the best thing was the grand jurors making the Fifth Amendment great again. And Kate, I know Melissa isn't here. I really want to do a reenactment. It's not going to be the same without her, but we will soldier on. So do you want to be grand juror or prosecutor?
I will be prosecutor. How about you be grand juror? But yes, once again, Melissa, we will do our best to do you proud, but there's no way we can do it as well as you would have. But all right, onward. You begin as grand juror.
Okay, grand juror. Girl, are you actually presenting any new actual facts or just a different viewpoint on your side? There wasn't the
Actual
word
grand
girl
jury
in there,
transcripts,
but
that's
the
pretty
rest
cool.
of it was verbatim.
Every other word but girl was in fact in the transcript. Prosecutor responds, okay, I'm feeling the skepticism already. Are you going to be able to listen with an open mind? Tell me the truth.
No.
Okay, then you have to go.
I heard this
no,
case
cancel, cancel.
last week, and I thought it was a crock of shit then, and I still think it is.
Okay, thank you for your opinion, everybody.
Do you have unlimited tries?
Do we have, what did you ask?
Unlimited tries. Like, you keep coming back as many times as you want.
Oh, I don't think we have to worry about that. Okay, now we have a second prosecutor. I'll do a second prosecutor. I think the saying is the second time is the charm.
Just like reading the grand juror telling the prosecutor, your case is a crock of shit, and why are you still at it?
And
was
why
just
do you get to
glorious.
keep coming back again
Right.
and again? Like,
A very legitimate question.
in you're shooting free throws, like you don't get unlimited tries until you make one. Like you're, giving a presentation at work, you're taking a law school exam. Like typically, like you put up and then you shut up, and that's kind of it. And I think it was a fair question, which is like, why in this of all spaces does one side just get to keep going again and again?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is that. Then, of course, we have the prosecutors identifying the grand jurors who wouldn't vote to indict the protesters and dismissing them one by one until the prosecutors arrived at a grand jury with the minimum required number of grand jurors who would return an indictment. And the prosecutor also talking about how he spoke with grand jurors outside of the grand jury room. I mean, as I think we said in an earlier episode, like, I think we all have a reasonable basis to think we need to see grand jury transcripts in the many other political prosecutions this administration is pursuing,
CPU
and
temp
there
is still
are
under
a
60,
lot.
but I
And
got
other
some
prosecutions as well. So
choppiness
just
there for a
related to
second.
this,
no
two
one cares.
kind of pieces of news that are definitely tied up with the latest exposure of the Department of Justice's misdeeds. So there are now allegations of grand jury misconduct in other Chicago cases involving the same prosecutors. So in one, a judge has ordered an evidentiary hearing where the defense alleges that the prosecutor again engaged in vouching, disclosing off-the-record negotiations with the defendant, and more. And in what seemed like a bid to prevent said hearing into prosecutorial misconduct, the U.S. attorney moved to dismiss the charges. Note that this is what happened in the Broadview 6 case where the prosecutor also tried to ward that off, and yet those grand jury transcripts were still released. And it looks like there's still going to be an inquiry into this case, so the judge has ordered the hearing, right, to continue, or a hearing to continue even after the prosecution filed the notice of moving to dismiss the case. And this case involves allegations of fraud related to federal COVID funding. And then there's an entirely separate case where a different judge agreed to review the grand jury transcripts in a case where the defendant pled guilty because the judge said, quote, the front office has created, as you know, a credibility crisis, and that is a real problem, end quote. The party of law and order, ladies and gentlemen.
Indeed.
Genuinely wondering, is this a good time or the best time, or, you know, not a good time to be engaging in crimes? It seems like they have tied up DOJ with people who are not engaged in crimes, and that the crime spree might be at the DOJ. The call is coming from inside the House.
So this reminds me of that period where Trump, this happened, I think, in both Virginia and Jersey, but Alina Habba in Jersey, Halligan in Virginia, but trying to install these pretty unqualified people as U.S. attorneys. This was particularly true in Jersey. And it sort of seemed like actual federal law enforcement ground to a halt in the state of New Jersey, you know, which is a state where sometimes like people like to do crimes. I mean, Illinois too. And I do wonder.
And you literally had judges, you know, begging the prosecutor, like, come before me and please tell me you have sorted out who's leading this office, because if you're wrong, this is going to invalidate all of the cases that proceed under this invalid structure.
Right. So it is a different and more under the radar set of at least until now, set of problems, it seems, in the Northern District of Illinois. So it's not, you know, this high profile person at the top, but it does seem as though, like, in the recesses of the grand jury room and who knows where else, like, justice is not functioning as it normally does in that office. Okay, so this is not a grand jury matter, but it is another politically vindictive prosecution that we wanted to mention. And that is one that flamed out when congressional candidate Brad Lander, hero of the resistance, all-round mensch, full disclosure, my brother-in-law is working on his congressional campaign, was found not guilty on charges related to him allegedly obstructing an elevator while he was inspecting conditions at an immigration detention facility here in New York. This was another utterly bizarre, baseless charge. Lander had been and has continued to be a regular presence and voice in protesting the administration's egregious conduct during immigration enforcement, in particular its practice of apprehending people showing up for regularly scheduled immigration court dates. And he has been trying to hold the federal government accountable. He had been previously, even before the events that led to these charges, been taken into custody at a federal courthouse when ICE was conducting enforcement operations there. Anyway, so he was acquitted in that case.
Strict Scrutiny is brought to you by Quince. Here's this season's take on why I'm Quince-pilled. Summer always changes how I get dressed. I want pieces that feel lighter and more breathable. Things that are easy but still put together. That's why I keep coming back to Quince. They focus on high-quality essentials that feel and look amazing. Think breathable linen and soft organic cotton. Well-made basics, but without the luxury markup. It's that rare balance where everything feels elevated. Weren't the only big oopsies from DOJ or Trump lawyers last week. Last week, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, that would be the one led by Harmeet "You Are Hose" Dillon, filed papers in the cases where they had indicted journalists who were documenting demonstrations at churches in Minnesota, indicating that actually they may have made some false statements in their applications for those warrants. The application for a warrant refers to Georgia Ford, an independent journalist who was indicted, as chanting while inside the church and using her camera as a weapon. Here's what Civil Rights Division says about that now. Quote, the statement about Fort chanting was incorrect, but the error was due to simple inadvertence. The characterization of the camera as a weapon, though not ideal editing, is immaterial. Although the government regrets any error and does its best to avoid them, mistakes are inevitable.
This is like a bullshit apology. This is really like
astonishing. You are saying criminally indicting people. You could not manage to dot your I's, cross your T's, determine whether the allegations were true.
It's also just like, it is not, it sort of purports to be a mea culpa, and it isn't even. Like, it's so defiant even in noting these pretty
This is I'm sorry I hurt your
errors.
feelings.
Yeah,
I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt. Apology.
Like
I'm sorry if you didn't like the false facts judge. Sorry.
We will see how that goes over. But I guess, honestly, there is something to say for the filing in that case, which at least acknowledged error, even if it didn't fully own it. But It was a filing. That stands in pretty stark contrast to Trump's personal lawyers in his case against the BBC. This, if you've sort of lost track of which one this is one of the many Trump cases against media entities. It's also one of several that seeks $10 billion in damages. Not totally sure what's going on with that number, but it seems to pop up again and again. This suit alleges essentially that the BBC was mean to Trump in the way it edited clips of his speech on January 6th, 2021, which is obviously like a multi-billion-dollar wrong.
That's what it is. It's a city full of NASCAR drivers.
And on Monday, the district court in that case filed an order to show cause as to why the plaintiff, again, one Donald Trump, had failed to file a response to the defendant's motion to dismiss the case. The order noted that the plaintiff filed 2 11th-hour procedural motions, but that didn't explain the delay or ask for the response deadline to be extended. And the judge was like, do you oppose the motion to dismiss? And why shouldn't I sanction you for completely blowing that deadline?
No, I'm just playing by myself,
to
watching
which
videos.
Donald Trump's lawyers basically said they didn't file a response because the court's protective rule
Every once in a while I'll
order,
say
like
something,
rules about what
just to
can and
remind-
can't be unsealed and procedures for unsealing
Remind people I exist.
were
Remind
too
myself that I
complicated
exist.
for them to understand. I will quote here. The
They were
delay
at
in
first.
filing the opposition memorandum on the docket was caused by plaintiffs' good faith efforts to comply with the protective order
Yay.
entered in this case and the court's procedures governing sealed filings.
I tried.
Math is hard.
Your Honor, therefore you can't criticize me. I don't know exactly what that was. Maybe he should have made some DEI hires for attorneys instead of dipping into the dicks as ex-husbands and incel lawyers DEI pool. And the wild thing is, something like this happened not once, but twice last week in the same case. So a separate docket entry noted that the plaintiff, again one Donald Trump, had failed to submit a position regarding a judicial order setting the procedures for discovery. That's a stage of the case. It says, quote, while counsel are free to disagree with the relief and basis on which the opposing party may seek said relief, they are not permitted to disregard the court's orders and procedures. End quote.
It's almost like actually diligently pursuing this lawsuit in a federal court is not the purpose of filing this lawsuit. Are you beginning to get
Almost.
that sense?
Yes, I am.
Does feel like it.
Do you think they'll try to set up a slush fund out of this one?
I mean,
like we settled the case with the BBC, and therefore Donald Trump will be paying, I don't know, the Proud Boys $1 billion, right? Like no,
the
less
federal government
related.
could try to intervene
Right,
and actually set up a
exactly.
different a media fairness slush fund. Oh my God, let's not give them any ideas.
Yeah.
Just BBC, please don't agree to yourself setting up a slush fund. I mean, we beg you. I don't think they would, but I mean, a lot of people have capitulated. These tactics are just so strong arm and anyway, just it's really important not to, even if it seems like a small thing, to reward this kind of behavior. Okay, so let's pivot to kind of the White House and Department of Justice outside of the courts and some of the internal executive branch activities. It basically seems like the Justice Department, and in particular the Office of Legal Counsel, or OLC, which is in some ways like a mini Supreme Court for the executive branch inside of the Department of Justice, basically, they seem to have decided that as the Supreme Court is taking its sweet time in issuing its decisions, they are going to get in on bad decision / bad lawyering season. So they at least initially have done so by releasing an opinion concluding that a big chunk of anti-discrimination law, and that is disparate impact liability, is probably unconstitutional.
So disparate impact liability is, as Kate was saying, a species of anti-discrimination law, among other places in Title VII, on employment, the Fair Housing Act, and many other civil rights provisions. And what it does is it prohibits some policies that result in discriminatory effects, but aren't necessarily intentional discrimination. And the Office of Legal Counsel, in all of its wisdom, thinks that is the real discrimination. The top line summary of the memo read, quote, EEOC's, that is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's, Title VII guidelines are unconstitutional because they contemplate liability based on disparate effects alone, without regard to an employer's likely intent, and pressure employers to engage in race-based decision-making.
Basically, like Calais said about the Voting Rights Act, the thinking on display here is that these regulations, because they direct employers to avoid business practices that disproportionately exclude or disadvantage racial minorities if those business practices aren't really necessary, that is illegal because it requires employers to consider, to think about whether they really should be excluding racial minorities, and the horror that is a constitutional problem. So OLC, not surprisingly, invokes the appalling decision in the Alabama case that followed on the heels of Calais. That's a case where the court allowed Alabama to implement a set of maps that lower courts had concluded were racially discriminatory twice, in part because Alabama refused to follow the Supreme Court's own decision, telling them that their maps violated the Voting Rights Act. OLC, right, the Justice Department memo we were just talking about says, quote, corrections are necessary to resolve the tension between disparate impact claims under Title VII and our colorblind Constitution, and cites this Allen versus Milligan order.
And like Calais did, the opinion effectively nullifies an amendment that Congress made to Title VII when Congress expanded disparate impact liability after the Supreme Court had narrowed it in a decision known as Ward's Cove. Some more news. There are still several cases challenging the slush fund for insurrectionists. In one case, Judge Leon ruled from the bench, denied Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington their request for a temporary restraining order against the slush fund. Judge Leon concluded that the case was moot after Carte Blanche, that is auditioning Attorney General Todd Blanche, and DOJ lawyers said the fund wouldn't go forward. Judge Leon said at the end of his ruling, quote, I give the Department of Justice fair warning. Don't play possum with this court, end quote. I'm sure that'll do it. In another case, Judge Brinkma in the Eastern District of Virginia concluded that the case was not moot and issued an injunction blocking the fund. The judge gave the Department of Justice a week to get a sworn declaration saying that the fund is actually dead before the judge would agree to say the case is moot and there is no longer a live controversy.
I feel like Todd Blanche is going to vouch for the deadness of the fund.
I vouch for the fund being dead, Your Honor.
I'm sure that will set the judge right at
Go to grab food. Be right back.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Okay, but there is a big piece of news that we alluded to, but that we really need to now give its proper treatment, and that is, Leah Littman,
the paperback release of Lawless. I am calling it Lawless Leah's version, not only because I unironically stan Taylor Swift, but also because I got to make updates to all the chapters and add a new section on the unitary executive and how the court has enabled Trump. And I just feel like it's useful pre-budding to all of the celebrations and plaudits the court is going to get for invalidating the birthright citizenship order. It just tries to put that in a kind of bigger picture and trace the unitary executive to, Richard Nixon thinking he was the victim of something and his people. But yeah, so I really enjoyed writing it, and I hope people will check it out.
And as Leah was just saying, if you haven't gotten the book, you need to get the paperback. But even if you have gotten the book, because she's Leah, has basically written kind of a new book, some additions and then an entirely new chapter. So even if you already have a hardcover, get a copy of the paperback.
It includes the Dark Lord of the Third Circuit, Emile Beauvais, among other characters. So
you don't want to miss it.
There we go. So favorite things and some housekeeping before our interview. Does that sound good?
Great. Let's do it.
Okay. So 2 things I had wanted to highlight, actually 2.5. So one is Jamel Bouie had another terrific piece in the New York Times titled "The Supreme Court Doesn't Own the Constitution." Definitely worth checking out.
Great piece, great title and great piece. Everything Jamel is doing these days, always is so good, but this piece is really exceptional.
Totally agree. Second is the Supreme Court did something I will put in my favorite things, although I'm not going to give them credit.
I'll just move this out of the way.
So the Supreme Court declined to stay a lower court ruling that had blocked the state of Alabama from using an execution protocol that gassed people to death after the court found the protocol constituted cruel and unusual punishment. This, of course, is a huge victory, getting the Supreme Court not to issue a stay that green lights an execution. So the district court had issued this decision after a full trial, and I really do think that the court's decision not to stay it reflected the great lawyering in the case from, among others, the plaintiff's lawyers who are at Arnold and Porter, as well as lawyering from our friend Steve Vladeck, who was on an amicus brief, who again explained the kind of particular procedural posture of the case and why the court shouldn't intervene because of it. My half favorite thing would be, I've been listening to the new Olivia Rodrigo album. So it's not my favorite. There are a few songs on there that are growing on me. So I loved The Cure. That is definitely a highlight, but that, had been released in advance of the album. I like Expectations, Out of My Way, and Maggots for Brains. Those are also, I think, high points on the album for me.
I have not listened yet. Okay, so that's a good weekend, family undertaking because we're driving. Yeah. And I wonder, so underscore what you said about the court's sort of unexpectedly correct order in, denying this stay application that I'm sure the state thought they had a good chance of winning at SCOTUS. And I also wonder in terms of I think excellent lawyering, Vladeck, and also the court did allow a nitrogen gas execution to go forward, and Sotomayor wrote an incredibly powerful
that's
dissent.
true.
And I wonder whether the fear of drawing another dissent like that was also a factor in the court doing the right thing here. It seems at least possible. Okay, so I will just mention a couple of favorite things. I just finished the novel The Hill by Harriet Clark, which is kind of a memoir because it is kind of about her life, or I think, but it's written as a novel, and it was a little bit of a slow wind up for me. I was not super into it at the beginning, but it's pretty amazing. So I would say if you're thinking about it, I would stick with it. It's just really beautiful and very moving and weird and just really, really good. Okay, so that's my recent fiction recommendation. I missed last week's episode because I was in Zurich, where I'd never been, for this conference on global threats to the rule of law, and it was just amazing to hear from these scholars and jurists from all kinds of places, and I just learned a ton, and I'm grateful to the organizers, and I want to shout out Renata Wietz and Elizabeth Holzleitner, who were both awesome scholars who were at the conference and who listened to the pod. And it's always a trip to, you're in London, you're in Austria, you're listening to our podcast. And they were, anyway, it was great to meet you both. Finally, I cannot claim that I am a long-standing real fan of the New York Knicks. As I've said before on this podcast, I am actually mostly a WNBA fan.
Yeah.
There's a great story about my husband took the kids and not me because I was somewhere else to a Knicks game. The Knicks and the Bulls were playing. We're mostly a Bulls family, actually, in terms of the NBA. And my youngest daughter is not a huge sports fan. And so he took our 3 kids. My older 2 were super excited. And they got to MSG and the players came out onto the court. And my youngest kid was like, wait, this is men? And my husband was like,
Where's
men can play
Ellie?
basketball
Where's
too.
Ellie the elephant?
It's okay, they can play. They're actually pretty good at it. But I just love that the orientation in my family is so, at least for some of us, my husband actually loves the NBA. But anyways, very WNBA focused. That said, the city and the energy around this, the whole postseason, the Knicks and this, NBA finals has been just glorious and kind of reminds me of the best things about New York City, which are just really important in this moment in which the worst things about the federal government seem to be on display constantly. Anyway, it just feels like an antidote sometimes. Anyway, so go Knicks.
I can even feel the immaculate
Can you?
vibes here
From-
in Michigan,
yeah, Ann
just
Arbor.
through
Yeah.
the screens
That's great.
and whatnot. It's really incredible.
It was I took my dog for that I wouldn't even talk about game 4 was so insane, but I took my dog for a walk in the last 5 minutes. I was too stressed. I just needed to shake it off. They were coming back, but I didn't think they could come back fast enough. So I was Shadow needs to go, so we go for a walk. And I just
Why are these
hearing
jackasses
people
still turning
screaming through their windows on my Brooklyn block, and
amazing.
slightly in these 1 or 2 second delays because everyone's Wi-Fi and whatever cable news they're listening to is a little bit different. So it was just this chorus of shouts that was just so euphoric. Anyway, so it'll already be post Saturday by the time you hear this episode, so we'll see what happens. But I am excited for Game 5.
So, speaking of immaculate vibes, Pride Month is here, and it's time to dress like it. This season, the Crooked Store is dropping gayer than ever in 2 brand new designs and bringing back an old favorite, the Gay for Democracy shirt. Plus, classics like Dreamboat Willie return in a new colorway alongside the ever-reliable Join or Die tee. Whether you're celebrating with your community, showing up to protest, or guilting your straight friends into buying you crooked merch in the name of gay rights, there's something here to match your Pride Month style.
And let's be honest, Pride doesn't end, so you'll be wearing these items long after June. Head to crooked.com/store to shop.
Okay, so as we said, during this episode, we spent a lot of time talking about prosecutors doing fuck knows what. And I actually wanted to add one additional pretty terrifying example of this, and that is MS Now broke the story that FBI agents might be terrorizing pro-democracy and voting rights organizations. So the FBI reportedly raided offices of the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, a pro-democracy organization that helps register voters in the state. And agents, again, according to the story, reportedly showed up at the homes of people who worked for the organization, maybe also just some canvassers asking for information and electronic devices. Some of them may have had subpoenas. It's obviously terrifying, and And we should all be alarmed at what, again, seems like another obvious attempt at election interference. The executive order isn't going anywhere. So now they are just trying to intimidate people. So again, having spent so much time talking about what prosecutors shouldn't be doing or what law enforcement shouldn't be doing and how some of that subverts democracy, please stay tuned for our next conversation with a prosecutor who is actually doing the thing, working to protect our democracy with a great new organization, FAFO. Yes, the acronym is FAFO, so be sure to stay tuned for that. This episode of Strict Scrutiny is brought to you by Alloy Health. Let's be honest, aging can come with some unwelcome changes. Sleep disruptions, hot flashes, brain fog, it can all hit us hard. Menopause is inevitable, but it's also treatable. Almost half of women go more. Delighted to be speaking with Mary Moriarty, Hennepin County Attorney, also known as the District Attorney in Minneapolis and surrounding suburbs and counties, and one of the founding participants of a great new organization known as FAFO. We'll explain more about that later. Mary, welcome to Strict Scrutiny.
Thank you so much.
So, Mary, we've talked about your office on the show before, but haven't actually had the opportunity to talk to you. And we've been talking about your office because your office has been one where it actually has two cases involving state charges filed against federal officers. Can you remind us what those cases are about?
Certainly. We filed a case on what I would describe as kind of a road rage situation involving an ICE agent named Gregory Morgan. We charged him. We had a nationwide warrant for his arrest. He did turn himself in several weeks ago, and he has this week filed a motion to remove to federal court. The other case that we charged is Christian Castro, who we believe shot Julio Sosa Solis in the thigh. We also had a nationwide warrant there. He was arrested in Texas, and right now we are working our way through extradition proceedings.
Got it. I think of the first case as a case of what I'm calling DWI, driving while an insane ICE officer, given that this is a case where the ICE officer on the road was driving in an unmarked vehicle, pulled up and pointed a Glock at, these poor people's heads. And anyway, so just a berserk kind of set of facts. So you mentioned that the second case, there is right now the extradition proceedings, and the first case, the defendant is trying to remove the case to federal court. So before, you make the decision to charge these cases, there's an investigation. And when you're investigating someone who is part of a law enforcement body, how is federal law enforcement or cooperation supposed to work in an ideal world?
The way it's supposed to work and has historically worked here is that everybody works together. In fact, in our political assassination case, where the defendant just pled guilty to the federal charges yesterday, we had a joint investigation with the FBI. We were working with the U.S. Attorney. We all got the investigation results. We charged and they charged. That's the way it has worked here, and that's the way it should work.
And that case, just to remind our listeners, involved the assassination of the Minnesota legislator Melissa Hortman, as well as her husband and her dog. Sorry, just to remind people of the facts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's how it's supposed to work. How has federal cooperation been working, either in the cases involving the federal immigration enforcement or the political assassination case you were just referring to?
And not well at all. In fact, when Renee Good was shot, I was on the phone with the FBI. Our state local law enforcement agency is the BCA, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Mm-hmm. So I was on the phone with them. I was on the phone with the U.S. Attorney, and everybody agreed this would once again be a joint investigation. And then suddenly the BCA was kicked off the case. And so we realized then and there it was going to be a different situation. They took away Renee Good's car. It's shrink wrapped. It's still sitting in a warehouse somewhere. They won't share any evidence that they collected or got from any statements. And then when Julio Sosa Solis was shot, we also thought we had a joint investigation. The BCA did show up at the scene. And what happened was at some point, the FBI said, well, we're no longer allowed to work with you. But the good news about that particular case was the crowd got really angry. There was a large crowd of community members and kind of got ICE to leave. And so the BCA was able to collect evidence in that case. But then when Alex Preddy was shot, it was on a Saturday morning, and we were prepared for non-cooperation, but it was pretty remarkable. When you saw the video, it was federal agents with their backs to the crime scene with batons actually physically keeping the BCA from entering that scene to investigate, which is what the BCA is trained to do. In any law enforcement involved shootings involving a Minnesota peace officer, they are the people that are directed to show up. So we were prepared. We got a search warrant on a Saturday from a judge, so a judicially signed warrant, unlike many that you see from ICE. But we got a warrant, and the federal government refused to honor that.
Which is funny because they don't think they need warrants, and I guess they don't think when other offices get warrants it matters. Really twofer there.
Yes. And we had been working with two law firms from Washington, D.C., the Washington Litigation Group and Aipac, and they've been working with us for free, and they've been tremendously helpful. But we were prepared. We filed a lawsuit in federal court asking for a temporary restraining order, that they collect the evidence, that they preserve it, and that they not alter it in any way. That was actually granted by a federal judge on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So we could see the progression of non-cooperation here, despite continued efforts. And I'll actually say the people on the ground, or the line people, really would like to cooperate and have reached out. We've had many conversations, and every time it goes to the administration, it gets stopped cold.
So this sounds like a just silly question to ask, but just for clarity's sake, like, what are some of the issues with this lack of cooperation? Like, what does it do, in practice?
That is a great question, because normally when prosecutors get cases, at least in Minnesota, we don't have our own investigators by and large. So they have been investigated by law enforcement. So we know everything that we have and that we don't have. For instance, if there's a shooting, we know if there's video. Mm-hmm. If there's a law enforcement shooting, we know whether the officer gave a statement or other officers there. And I will say we also know who they are. And I think that would surprise most people to know that we don't even know for sure who the agents were who shot Alex Preddy. That has never been verified. ProPublica published a report on it. But you have to think about this from a prosecutor's perspective. We have to be able to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. And that usually doesn't have to include identifying the name of the agents who were involved in it. Mm-hmm. So it is making us approach it from what do we actually have from our own investigation with the BCA, and what don't we have? And also, what would they say? For instance, in the Preddy case, we were told by the media, I guess, that they were all wearing body cam. Mm-hmm. We don't know that. We don't have that. We have to sit here and wonder, well, what would the agents say?
Right.
And that creates barriers because you don't know what you don't know. You can just guess at that.
So you mentioned that, there's a lack of cooperation, but I'd have to imagine that in addition to a lack of cooperation, there's also fears about less of a defensive posture than an offensive one, where there might be a concern that if, let's say, BCA or, state or local law enforcement tries to conduct an investigation, that the federal government, or at least some in the federal government, would retaliate against them. Has that also kind of impeded the ability to just carry out, normal police power stuff?
That was very apparent as Operation Metro Surge was going on. And we have something like 36 different law enforcement entities here in Hennepin County, which is Minneapolis and its suburbs, as you said. And what we were hearing from community, what you were hearing, what you were seeing in videos too, is community members saying, hey, we're being occupied by our own federal government. Who is here to help us? Who is here to protect us? And I had conversations with local law enforcement chiefs. And it was very interesting because they said they didn't have jurisdiction. And I said, why do you think that? Yes, if anybody from the federal government comes into your community and you believe that they may have committed a crime, yes, you have jurisdiction to investigate and try to collect as much evidence as you can. In fact, we would like you to go to the scene and collect evidence in video that may have been taped over. But here was something that was really telling. Ultimately, they said our officers are afraid of being arrested or something worse. And, my position on that was, yes, this is unprecedented. It's unprecedented for all of us. And I totally get that. And yes, they could be arrested and yes, maybe worse. However, you signed up to protect and serve your community, and your community is out there with whistles. And so you need to kind of have a hard look in the mirror and figure out, who you really signed up to protect and serve. So that it was a big issue. And I think it remains a big issue. And something that, as part of FAFO, when I've talked to other DAs, I can say the things I wish I would have known before this hit us. And one of those things would be to have conversations with local law enforcement to try to bring them along and have conversations about, hey, in a perfect world, you would get there, you might intervene, you are wearing body cam, you are collecting the names of witnesses and contact information so there can be an investigation after the fact. But those, as I discovered, those conversations need to happen before something like this, before they are in that situation.
So you've already kind of begun to gesture at this, but I do want to spell it out because I think many people are wondering, what can I do? What should we be doing now, in order to address ongoing federal overreach and potential additional federal overreach in the lead up to, potentially the election. And so you mentioned that one thing that has been useful is the fact that people on the ground, for example, suggested to ICE, no, you actually need to allow local law enforcement in to investigate, and that there were actually photographs taken of federal law enforcement actively not investigating, Alex Preddy's murder, and that all of that was useful, to allowing state officers to do their jobs. So, are there other pieces of advice, you would offer either to members of the public or, as you were just saying, to other district attorneys who are thinking about, my area, my state might be a target of some federal law enforcement searches, whether now or in the lead up to the election, what should I be doing now in order to protect my community?
I think that's a great question. And as you know, local prosecutors really don't have to deal much with federal law. And the administration started out by saying, and they still continue to say in some respects, that federal agents have absolute immunity. And you heard people say, no one can touch you. You can do whatever you want,
Our
kind of thing.
vice president said this. So, oh yeah, I heard it.
Yeah, and you have to think that that had an effect on ICE agents who were being told that. And so I think being prepared to say, no, that is not the case, and educating the community, educating, frankly, the ICE agents and everybody, police, everybody, to say there is no such thing as absolute immunity. And you can't come in here and commit crimes that if it was anybody else other than the federal government would be a crime, and that we are prepared to investigate. One of the big issues here, and I think Minneapolis, like many other cities, has a lot of camera surveillance, and it's taped over after 2 weeks. So we had opened up what we call our Transparency and Accountability Project, or TAP. We started out investigating 17 cases, including Bovino throwing green gas canisters at people in a park. And what we discovered was that the video had been lost. And so you've got to be able to preserve that video. But I think there's a deterrence value. And I don't think there's a deterrence value in a lot of things, especially with young people. But with this, I think being prepared and starting the messaging that if you come to our community and you commit a crime, we will do our best to investigate that and prosecute that. And I would say it's really important now with elections coming up.
Yeah. So you mentioned, working with other DAs, guidance with other DAs, and we've now alluded to FAFO or FAFO a few times. Do you want to share with our listeners what FAFO is, since I've only been kind of, using the acronym for perhaps obvious reasons?
Yes. And I'm pretty sure, it was Larry Krasner from Philly who came up. I'm sure he wanted that acronym and we just had to find words to fill it. It is the Coalition for the Fight Against Federal Overreach. And we're very serious about banding together because right now, given what the federal government is doing, local prosecutors can be at least one lane of fighting back. But it really requires us working together, because I think if you're just in this by yourself, it can be really isolating and you need help.
Yes.
For instance, we're very fortunate to have the help of the Washington Litigation Group and Aipac, because you have to be able to understand even before you're thinking about prosecuting, obviously, but okay, what happens if you do charge?
Right.
And we came to learn that the defendant can make a motion to remove to federal court. But I think none of us, I certainly can speak for myself, I had no idea that if it was removed to federal court, we remained the prosecutors.
Yes. Yep.
And that state law applied on substantive law and procedural federal law applied. But a really important thing here is that the president cannot pardon a conviction because it's under state law. And so those are basic things that I think most local prosecutors just don't have to think about. And then what do you do when you have this motion to remove and the ICE agent says that they should have supremacy clause immunity? What does that mean? And that is something that a judge has to decide. I think I mentioned,
which means it's not absolute, by the way, right? If
right.
The judge has to decide it, you think.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's actually a potential defense that doesn't prevent us from prosecuting. But you want to know what that means, because you do not want to bring a charge and then not be able to overcome the argument that they were acting within the scope of their duty and they did nothing above and beyond that. So you need to be prepared on topics that you never thought you had to think about since law school. And so that's one thing that we are talking about in FAFO. What do we need to know? How do we get prepared if this should happen in our communities? And elections are something we're really talking about, because I think it's really important to prepare for the worst and hope that nothing happens. But what do we do if ICE agents show up at polling places? What do election judges do if they're told or asked or demanded by ICE, hand over your ballots or something like that? So we're doing a lot of preparation on that front here in Hennepin County. And I know we're working on that in FAFO as well.
So that's all very encouraging. I mean, there's so much we can all do to help one another, whether it's resource sharing, pooling of knowledge, or, just making each other not feel alone. When you see one person fighting, I think it's easier, to be brave. And I like to think of your office as basically doing, what the Knicks did in their recent come from behind victory, right? They didn't give up. They stayed in the fight. And you know what? They pulled it off. So may you bring those same vibes to not only Minnesota, but the rest of the country. Mary, I do want to ask you one last question, which is, what's giving you hope, in the work you've been doing, let's say the last 18 or so months?
One thing was the community response here to Metro Surge. I don't think it's really possible to appreciate everything that community members did by driving neighbors' kids to school, by bringing food, by paying rent. I mean, people coming together was just remarkable. And it was actually the community members that ultimately drove ICE out. They're still here in some respect, but it was the really negative publicity, if you want to put it that way, that I think made them leave. And that was all by the community. The other thing, and you talk about this, I'm a big fan of the podcast too, until you get to the Supreme Court, when you fight back, you win.
Mm-hmm.
You really do, because a lot of the things that the Trump administration is doing are just illegal, but they're not entirely illegal until a court says they are. And much of what they do is to sow fear. This is what they were trying to do in Metro Surge too. And if you just comply because you're afraid of what might happen, that's what they want. And so when you push back, either in court or in any other way that is in your lane, like our lane is accountability, you usually win. And so that gives me some hope, even though the Supreme Court is fairly tragic right now, to say the least. But in the lower courts, we're winning, and they just don't want to fight much of the time.
Right.
I mean, we actually, as you know, it was announced, we found out via Twitter. I did not know that was how the Department of Justice announced its past pattern and practices investigations, but they announced one investigating our office for a policy that we had just put into place, while at the same time pulling out of the federal consent decree for the pattern and practice. But anyway, we fought back on that and we won. So I do want to say to people, I know it's scary. And this is, I think, part of the reason we need to band together and talk about supporting each other, because it is scary. And at the same time, when we push back, we generally win.
Yes. Well, I love that as an ending note. Mary Moriarty, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on Strict Scrutiny. We're obviously going to be following all of the great things your office has been doing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Mary Moriarty for that great conversation. And we will be back in your ear holes next Monday, unless the Supreme Court decides to give us some big opinions between now and then. And we'll have bonus episodes coming your way if that happens.
For those of us who, are within that woke movement, I still use the word, so I put myself in it.
Yeah. Well, we got woke Bill Kristol now. You've won him over.
Yeah.
There's converts everywhere. We're working on some merch. Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. I have an exciting guest for a pre-taped Juneteenth show. I'm going to the Bayou tomorrow, so we're taping this on Thursday afternoon. So if Donald Trump, I don't know, decides to invade Cote d'Ivoire or something between now and then, we'll get to that on Monday's show. In the meantime, he's a contributing editor of Vanity Fair. He's a Sterling Brown Endowed Chair in the English department at Howard. He's an author with a bunch of works, including We Were 8 Years in Power, an American Tragedy about the Obama presidency. It's Ta-Nehisi Coates. Hey, man.
Hey. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. You wrote a bunch of other books. You wrote too many books for me to list them all. And
I hate when people do that. I hate, you don't even got to list any of the books, honestly.
All right. Well, I just picked out one because it's relevant today. As we're taping the festivities at the opening of the Obama Library are ending. We've had some speeches from the former president, First Lady, and others. I'm going to play a clip from in a minute. Well, I assume you do have Obama legacy takes, and you wrote the book. It's been a minute now. And so, there's been more time to kind of stew in the aftermath. I'm just wondering what hops to mind today on the opening of the library.
Does he watch this show? Because if he does, I have
former president?
Yes, I have to tailor my remarks.
I have no evidence that he does, which is unfortunate.
Okay, I'll be completely
I've been trying to get him on. And I don't know why he won't do it. But I do think he has some friends who listen. So if you're hearing this now, I would love to have him on and have a growing respect for him every year. Ta-Nehisi might be going the other direction. I don't know. We'll hear.
No, I bet he does listen. This is his sort of podcast, actually.
Kind of.
I'm certain he listens.
Kind of, which is why it's upsetting he's not on. I agree with you.
Right. No, this is a sweet spot, man. Yeah, no, I mean, my thing on him is pretty much, what it was at the time. And it was that only, like, Barack Obama could have been the first black president. Only somebody like him could have been the first black president. And what I mean by that is someone who had the kind of historical background wherein they had been in intimate spaces with a white parent, white grandparents who had treated him as equal, who were not racist themselves, and I guess he would say extended white family also. Raised in Hawaii, which is not to say that Hawaii is like, you know, a non-racist paradise, but certainly a place, you know, I've been to Hawaii and the black-white dynamic is not the major thing going on there,
Yeah.
you know, as it would have been in Chicago, you know, had he been raised there. And so what I think is that gave him, or what I've thought is that just gave him a very, very different perspective, you know, and allowed him to see the best in, you know, the largest, you know, voting population in this country. I think he communicated that. And I think there really was no, you know, other way that you were going to see a black president. Unfortunately, I think the downside of that was I don't think he could have imagined the past 10 years. I don't think that was really possible for him. I mean, he could have imagined a Trump winning and then Trump winning again too. You know, I mean, maybe by 24 he could imagine it happening again.
Yeah, sure.
But I certainly think the first time he just couldn't. And so I think that had.
How does that lack of imagination, like what did not having that ability to imagine that? Because I guess that was me too. How did that leave his presidency like poorer or reflect on his presidency?
I think he maybe didn't. I think he did not see the vulnerability of it. It's so much harder to build things than it is to destroy things. And you know, Trump excels at destroying. Doge was easy. That's easy. You know, you win the presidency, you just bring somebody in and, you know what I mean, to destroy.
Well, they didn't save any money.
Obamacare was no, we didn't. No. Let's be clear.
It's not easy to save money, but
it's not easy to save money. But I never took that as the intent. You know what I mean? I never took that as the true intent of Doge to begin with. But Obamacare is hard. Obamacare is really, really, really hard. Pulling together a consensus to, you know, help and build something that's going to be enduring. That's really, really hard. And I think I just don't think there was an appreciation of how easily, you know, things can be rolled back.
And so if you had that appreciation, like what types of things would he have done differently, do you think?
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think about, like, I guess the reason why this strikes me is because when I was working on a profile of him at the end of the presidency, like, you know, he said, you know, and I'm sorry to keep mentioning this. If he does listen to this show, I know he's probably tired of me saying this over and over. But he said, look, Trump can't win. He said the American people, he said they go for, like, they are generally, you know, a people who, you know, prefer an optimism, you know, in their candidates, you know, Nixon aside, you know, and so he just didn't see it as a possibility. Maybe, for instance, you know, and this argument has been made before, instead of Merrick Garland, you get a Ketanji Brown Jackson nomination, right? And then once you get
you force it through. You force it through. I think he would even say this. Like, in retrospect, he would have spent political capital making sure it gets through rather than assuming that, you know, that the norms will prevail.
Or Tim, even if you don't get it through, it becomes a rallying cry.
That's true.
You know what I mean? People who, you know, maybe are not, you know, as activated, become activated by this thing, you know? And his way was, can I find the candidate or can I find the nominee who the people that hate my guts will accept? And I just, I don't know that he ever just understood the extent to which, you know, he was loathed by the opposition party, you know, and how active and how powerful, you know, that hatred was, you know?
Well, I was going to skip this clip, but since you mentioned that this is the type of thing that Obama would be into, this podcast, I feel compelled to prove you right by playing something that he said earlier today at the library. Please, let's play the clip where he talks about how great Mitt Romney is.
And a belief that qualities of character, honesty, integrity, kindness, compassion, a sense of duty and honor, those things matter in our public dealings, just as they do in our private lives. These are not, these are the values and traditions I believe in. And they are not Republican or Democratic values. They're American values we can all share, regardless of party. Values every president here today, as different as we are, has tried our best to uphold. Values that John McCain and Mitt Romney believed in no less than I did. It is our greatest inheritance.
You can see why I'm loving him more and more every minute. All right, what did you make of that?
I mean, I think I want to, like, what shall I give? I think, like, one has to be sympathetic, first of all, to the work of electoral politics, right? And to the position of a president. And like, this is what I'm, was kind of alluding to earlier. Like, his politics can't be my politics and be who he is. It just can't. He can't get up there and say what I think. And I don't have that expectation either, by the way. So on some level, I guess I understand the politics of saying things that way. I am compelled to also say, in my role, did the past, and I'm speaking, very conservatively here, did the past 10 years of the Republican Party not happen? Is that not what Republican values are? Like, I mean, was J6 not that? And so
nominated him 3 times.
I mean, 3 times. I mean, so at what point is this a statement about who people are and what people are? And you also have to say that, like, Mitt Romney tried to go work for Donald Trump. Like that's not all of who Mitt Romney is, right? Like, yeah, I get it. That's not all. He's done other things that are worthy, and so I don't want to. But that's also, what I mean, part of the story, And so this is not so much a slam on Mitt as it is to reflect the complication of it. I guess to me, like, you were asking, what is the danger in this, and what I see in that is still not quite. This is my critique or my worry. Still not quite grappling or not quite understanding, like, how bad it is and where we are.
I'm gonna play one more quote that takes us more into your article.
Can I go back on that too, though? Can I give the other side of that?
Yeah.
But there is, a part of me that
wants people to feel everyone's better angels.
I think politicians should do that.
Right.
I actually do think, like, this kind of, like, when Trump, during COVID said, well, it's only going to hurt blue cities. Like, that wasn't just bad for blue cities. That's bad for, like, that is how you get 50 years from now, like a civil war. Like it starts with that. You know what I mean? And so, I guess, like, I'm conflicted myself in that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I'm also conflicted in it because it's like I hear those words and I had the opposite initial reaction to you, which is kind of like, yeah, I love that. Like, yeah, you're right. Mitt Romney and John McCain were honorable. That's nice. And then I heard you talk and I was like, yeah, but also fuck these people. You know what I mean? And I don't know. You know what I mean? And maybe there's a way to do both, and that's a little more artful. I don't know. Not to nitpick the speech making, but like maybe there's a way to do both.
Also, most people are complicated. Like, you're not like they have been honorable. Like, there are moments, where they really were, honorable, and so that's I don't know. Look, Tim. As a writer, I am, I guess, much less interested in the heroism or the particular weakness or dishonor of certain people, and I'm more interested in the structures that make them possible. You know what I mean? So I can't sit here and give 10 minutes on why Mitt Romney sucks or why John McCain sucked or why I can't. They're probably very honorable people in their personal lives.
He threw in some Democrats in there too, by the way. Joe Biden was on the stage.
Yes. I think, people are the product of situations, more than anything.
Hey, y'all, we're just doing some upgrades out on the back porch. It's looking better. It's a little cozier, looking a little less like a college frat house vibe. To buy. That's DUPE.com to finally feel confident about what you're buying. I want to play this other clip because it does tie more directly to your article that you had in Vanity Fair. We're going to dig into, which looks into, what a next black president could look like, looks into Kamala Harris's campaign and in particular her relationship with activists in Gaza and how that interplay negatively impacted her campaign. But so as a lead into that, though, Obama does start talking about foreign policy and tries to contrast himself with Trump and his views on foreign policy. And I think that the way he does it, he talks a lot about the structures that you're talking about. And so I just want to listen to that and get your reaction to whether this is a whether this is a workable framework anymore for how the world should work.
And what I heard on every continent as president is that when American foreign policy lives up to our highest ideals, when we champion human rights and democracy and the sound stewardship of our planet, when we take the lead in eradicating disease and feeding the hungry and educating children, when we encourage cooperation between nations, instead of trying to dominate and bully and squeeze every advantage just because we can. And most of all, when we show through our example here at home that even a country as big and diverse as ours can make democracy work, it turns out all nations, including ours, become more prosperous and secure. And the world gets a little bit brighter.
It's the case for benevolent globalism, benevolent hegemony, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. I mean, that's probably generally true. The complication for that is, I mean, and this is what I spent much of the article doing is, and I didn't know this, you know, when I certainly, you know, the last time I really wrote about, like at length, you know, about President Obama. I did not have the requisite knowledge and understanding of the amount of times and the degree to which we have not actually done that, though. And I actually think one of the things that we're really avoiding on the foreign policy front is the extent to which Trump is actually an extension of some of our worst impulses. That actually might be the area where he's most American. Ben Rhodes has a piece that I won't quote from. It's in New York Review of Books. It's a review of Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War. I really am getting McNamara. It's a review of his biography. And one of the things that Ben, who, you know what I mean, was in the Obama administration as close as anybody to Obama foreign policy. But what he comes to at the end of that is that, you know, we have basically allowed ourselves to believe that our, you know, mythology of good intentions was enough. But as it turns out, around the world, they remember other things.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know that we grapple with that enough.
Yeah, it was interesting. You laid it out a lot in the article. I don't know, you and Julian Casablancas are like on the same page, because when the Strokes were playing at Coachella this year, they did a little thing where they put up on the video screen all the people we fucked over the seas, you know, from the CIA, like over the last 40 years. And, and then I was like reading your list, and I was like, it's kind of similar to what the Strokes were playing at Coachella. I was like going through all of our worst hits, all the Alan Dulles worst hits. But I wonder, and then I'll get to the article. My thought about what it feels like. The case that you made there, and Ben Rhodes' change of heart is evidence of this, is that like the narrative on this domestically is changing. And I, like when you were last on, we were talking a lot about the power of narrative. And I do feel like, I don't know, I feel like had Harris won, the narrative that Obama kind of lays out there, that like, you know, the best of what America has done makes up for our failings, and that we're a force for good in the world, was still kind of the dominant one, you know? Like there were people who disagreed, obviously, but it was still the dominant narrative. And it kind of feels like to me, certainly on the left, but even in the kind of J.D. Vance, Tucker wing of the Republican Party, that narrative is being challenged, and it might be hard to really ever get it back.
I think that's true. And I think I haven't seen a polling on this, but and perhaps I'm being too optimistic about this, but my general sense of Americans is, look, they may not understand the details of this or that. It may not be up on, you know, what argument is being made for what, but I don't think we love foreign wars in general. Now we do it. That's not to, you know, exempt, you know, the country of it, but I you know, and then like Iran is so dumb. Like it's so
war,
dumb.
you mean, was
the
so
war?
dumb.
The war.
Yeah.
Sorry, not the country. Oh my God. Thomas.
Well, I mean, the country does some dumb things too. But I mean, so do we. I just said it's not just America that does dumb things. But anyway, no, the war was so dumb.
A lot of countries do dumb things. Yes.
Yeah, the war was so dumb. Yeah.
But the war was so dumb that it's just that it's hard to mask it. You know what I mean? Like. Yeah. Like there's not any, sort of, narrative. And Trump didn't try really hard, by the way,
right.
To provide much. It's just the violence. But here's where I want to push people a little bit.
Okay.
Iraq was dumb too.
Right.
Iraq was dumb too. And look, there's a strong argument that Libya was actually dumb too. That doesn't make Gaddafi a good guy. You know what I mean? That doesn't make him okay. But, Obama himself says that's the biggest mistake of his presidency. He himself, says that. And so I don't know that like Gaza was a lot of other things besides this, but certainly dumb is one of those. And so in that respect, I think we let ourselves off a little easy. And I think it's easier to accept, like when you talk about like the narrative changing, it's easier to see it with Trump because he's so profane. Yeah. You know what I mean? And brags about, violence and talks about ending civilization. He doesn't even try to wrap it in
the flag and in the American spirit because he doesn't believe in any of that, right?
No.
And so that lays it a lot more bare.
That's right. And so I think that makes it a lot easier for people to see certain things.
All right, let's talk about the article. You start with Fannie Lou Hamer, who was... I guess you described kind of the heroine of the 2024 convention. There's a lot of odes to her. Just talk about why you kind of started with her and how you tie it to the broader critique of the Harris campaign.
So I was there in 24, and what I was aware of immediately was the fact that, Fannie Lou Hamer was being praised, and everybody, she was on everybody's lips. But what I remembered is that actually the Democratic Party did not, ultimately seated a segregated delegation and did not allow her integrated delegation to be seated. That was the end result. And then I saw...
That was the end result of back in 64, whatever
in 64, excuse me, of the struggle in 64. That the Democratic Party actually didn't do the right thing.
Yeah.
And the reasons why it did not do the right thing is because Johnson was deeply afraid of losing the Deep South. And which he ultimately did, by the way, or many of the states in the Deep South, I should say it like that. And then at the same time, I was watching this group of Palestinian Democrats and people who were sympathetic to the Palestinian cause there, who were not asking for delegates to be seated. Many of them were already delegates, but were asking for a speaker. And I was made aware that there hadn't been an Arab American speaker on the stage since 1988. And so what I saw as I was watching this praise of this person who had been, pushed out of the frame in 64 and was being claimed as his hero was another group of people being pushed out the frame too. That was, like my initial thing. And then after, doing the research, what became clear to me was that Fannie Lou Hamer was not just a champion of Black folks in Mississippi and not just a champion of Black folks at all, but a champion of human rights. Spoke out at a time against the Vietnam War when, it was still not popular within the civil rights movement. That in fact, she was not the only Black woman that did that Coretta Scott King spoke out against the Vietnam War at a delicate moment and against Johnson at a very, very delicate moment before her husband did, much to the angst of the SCLC. And I guess I was struck by the contradiction of praising people who in their time were radicals, or seen as radicals, I should say, but not really living up to their example.
So in the article you talk, and there's a moral critique and kind of historical critique of the Harris campaign's lack of grappling with Gaza. But there's also like political critique, which is basically that it simultaneously could have been the right thing to do and politically salient for her to align herself more with the protesters who are concerned about what's happening in Gaza. And, well, I guess before I give any pushback to that, I guess, do you want to just explain that point of view?
I mean, look, I'll just take it from hers. I mean, look, I heard from numerous people that she pulled folks aside, and disproportionately Black women told me this, that she pulled them aside and said, and this is before she was running, by the way. before like Joe Biden had dropped, and communicate her deep discomfort, and her deep feeling and empathy. And when I talked to them afterwards, their thing was, I don't know why she didn't communicate this publicly. So let me just start from the perspective of what my reporting told me was like what she presented publicly was not what she actually believed. Now, I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong, but this was told to me. I heard this numerous times. It's not like something that I just heard from one person. And so the first thing is, I would say is, were you true to your own beliefs? And were you true to your own beliefs about the value of human life, Secondarily to that, are you being true to the people you claim, as I talked about, with Fannie Lou Hamer, and Coretta Scott King? And the third thing is, Tim, I can't give an ultimate verdict on whether Gaza lost her the election or not. And I can't give a verdict on whether they would have won her the election. But I do want to say this. There are some things worth losing for. And there are some things that people will remember you differently when you lose for them. And I just think that had Kamala Harris lost, and that was certainly a possibility, simply because she echoed and stated the beliefs as they were communicated to me, I think people would think about, and I'm just not solely talking about Palestinian Americans, I think the party would think about her a lot differently in this moment.
I just have two thoughts on that. One is, and this goes to kind of this broader question about like harm reduction and candidates, and I was on with Dan Savage before the election. He asked me to come on. And he was like, I'm hearing from a lot of my listeners. He's a gay sex advice person. He lives in Seattle. He's like, I've got a lot of progressive, activist types. And he's like, I'm hearing from a lot of my listeners that they might want to sit it out because they're mad at Harris about Gaza and they're mad at her about various things. And he's like, I want you just to kind of talk it out with me. And during that conversation, he was making the point that like, okay, I've had to be a harm reduction voter my whole life, like up until just now, right? In the 80s, my friends were dying and I was voting for the Democrat because they were less so. And I voted for Barack Obama when he said I shouldn't be right to get married, and we don't have to go through the whole list, and so he was, I think, rightly kind of frustrated with this notion that people were not going to do that. In this case, when the stakes were so high and the gap between the two candidates was so great when it comes to harm or potential harm, even including in Gaza, by the way. There's no sense that Trump was going to be any better. And so when the stakes are that high, does that change that question at all, or that calculus over whether there are things worth losing for?
Yeah, I mean, look, I voted for it, you know what I mean? And I told people, and I went in front of, majority Muslim and Arab American audiences and had to explain myself, which I did. And pretty much what I said is, look, we as Black Americans in general have not had the luxury of voting in presidential elections for people that, we felt fully saw our humanity. And that is just what it's been for us. Having said that, I'll never forget, man, I was in, and this is not the only time this happened, but I was in Houston, Texas, and I was, with a group of Palestinian Americans, very, very accomplished group, by the way. And the woman's house who was hosting me, beautiful, large mansion. And she sat next to me. She said, I'm from Gaza. 200 members of my family have been killed. And she said, I don't go outside anymore. I don't talk to my neighbors about this because they think it's right that my family be killed. I think they're two separate questions. There's one question for, people like me, about like what we should have done with our vote. And the answer to that, for that, to me is very, very clear. We should have voted for Harris, I feel the loss of some measure of my humanity, or I felt the loss of some measure of my humanity by turning to this woman and telling her, you have to vote for a member of the administration that was shipping bombs for this to happen. That you have to now, have a conversation with your family to tell them why Tim, I couldn't do that, man. I couldn't do that. And I got to be honest with you. If I were in her shoes, I don't know what I would do. I don't know, because I think the thing we also have to face is everybody didn't make the decision that we made. Everybody didn't make, like, there are Palestinian Americans and Arab Americans who made the harm reduction decision. In fact, Kamala won the plurality of the vote. So most of them did, you know what I mean? Like the plurality of them made the harm reductionist decision. You know what I mean? But look, I get it. I mean, the thing I would ask you is, and the thing I've been asking myself is, man, at what point do we stop doing this? Like, at what point, what is the point where we stop saying to people, this is the most important election of your lifetime, and you must accept things that, in this case, you must accept the murder of your family members, the killing of your family members for the greater good. Like, at some point, like, we have to figure out how to have a different kind of politics. Now, maybe that's not when you go in the voting booth.
Wonder what the comments are. I don't know why I'm talking. Fuck this. Oh shit! I didn't know you were still there. All right, take it easy, man. I thought I'd lost everyone. Catch you later, my dude.
But I feel like we go in the voting booth and then there's no discussion of it afterwards. It's just, you know what I mean? We ramp up for another 4, another 4, another 4. And it's like, when are we going to do something different?
I'm going to answer that. I do just want to say, because I was going to ask you about it, but you also tell the story of Dima Shamali, and people should just go read the article. I mean, you tell some just really heart-wrenching, like brutal stories about people who had gotten out of Gaza and what happened to their family. And I do think that colors the conversation. And I think people would be better served by just reading the whole article. But man, my answer to your question is like, yeah, never. We're never gonna get. It's never gonna be a better politics, and like you just have to accept it. Like we live in a system. And
you think never? You don't think it's possible?
Well, I think better things are possible. I think better things are possible. I'm not the meme that's like, oh, that person, they think better things are possible. Fuck them. I think better things are possible. I think we can improve. But like, we live in a country of 30 million people. Like, there's like I don't know. I look at the way people communicate now with AI and the internet, and how easy it is to manipulate people, and how frail we all are, and how much fragility, all of the demons that we all have inside of us that we're trying to navigate. And it's just like the idea that like we're going to be able to get to a place where you can organize a country this diverse, this big, in a way that is like totally pure, I just think is kind of a fantasy. And I think that
but there's never a totally pure. I just wanted to separate myself from that. There's never a totally pure.
I hear
that
that's
doesn't make
fair.
sense.
But like, I don't know, man. I just think that the 2024 election is such a strange prism with which to throw this complaint on, that I'm tired of people telling me that like every 4 years it's the biggest election of our lifetime. It's like, sorry, like it's the only election that we've had in any of our lifetimes where one of the candidates was a legitimate threat to end the system of government that we have. Like it was the only one. And so like you can tell me like, oh, we can look back at 2012 or whatever and say that was a silly thing to say between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, and it was, or in 1996 between Bob Dole and Bill Clinton. That was pretty silly. Also, we don't predict a lot of things. I don't know. 2000 looks pretty important. If we start to playing the counterfactual game, I mean, Al Gore wins that, we probably don't go into Iraq, and who the hell knows? We don't have Trump probably. I mean, a lot of little what's the little blocks fall a lot of ways. There's the meme where the person touches one block and then something crazy happens at the end of it, right? Like who knows what happens if Al Gore wins. So I don't know. I am sympathetic. Like, obviously, I would not look at somebody who has had 200 people die in their family and say, you should do this. I'm going to tell you what to do. I think we can also just like say that the choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump was like the clearest choice that we've had in a long time. And we're probably not going to have a better one after that, I don't think.
Look, it was clear for me. It was clear for me. But one of the reasons why, I want to say two things.
Sure.
It is certainly logically possible that every 4 years it really is the most important election of your lifetime. That is certainly logically possible. But what I find is that we have a level of sympathy for certain groups of people and not for others. And in this case, I mean like non-voters. And so like for somebody that's just trying to live their life and go through their day, I guess I understand how at a point that message stops resonating.
Right. Same to me.
You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, they just stop. They stop hearing it. But the second thing, I want to say is like the choice was clear for me with my particular history. But one of the reasons why, I went through the history of those events in that article is because I was trying to reconstruct the memories of other people. That is to say, if you are an Arab American, or you're a Muslim American, you're a Palestinian American, and you're in this country in 2024, and let's say you're 30 years old, what you remember is you remember Iraq, you remember Afghanistan, you remember innocent wedding parties being hit by drones,
Yemen,
you remember Abu Ghraib, you remember ICE. You know what I mean? Like your memory is, fuck, man, these people have always over here. Like I get calls from my relatives. You know what I mean? Like there's violence over there. I come here and the cops are like spying on my mosque. Like this, it's just constant. It's constant. And it was constant for my parents too. And it was constant for my grandparents. And so and now here we are with, and I don't have a stat, in front of me, but, with the killing of the largest amount of children, of any war, in the 21st century. And I see all of y'all waving these flags for Ukraine. And then it's me and I can't even speak at the convention. Like, where am I in this party? Where is my life? Where are the lives of my family members? And in this case, look, I'm with you. Kamala was the right choice. But I feel like I can also say that and say, we got to do a better job. like we have to do a better job making people feel like we see their humanity. And I don't think we did a good one,
I think that's a totally compelling critique. And I think a critique that unites the fact that like Kamala didn't provide motivation to people and provide, and just takes us back to Obama at the top, I guess, provide that aspiration or that reason to believe that they should help make their lives better. I think that's a legitimate critique of the campaign. I think it ties to other things besides Gaza, but there's other things happening though. There's also the evil side of this we were talking at the top, and sometimes my critique of the Gaza folks, not the people there, but like the pro-Palestinian activist crowd, the uncommitted crowd, that like, it's kind of, in retrospect, it's easy to be like, well, she lost because of this my pet issue. When like all the advertising that went against her was about trans surgeries in prison. So no, it's like, well, maybe it was that. Trump campaign didn't think that's why you lost. Like Trump campaign thought you lost because this other stuff, right? So it's complicated, but I do think, I think that you make a compelling point about how to think about these things from the perspective of people that, you know, are coming from a different history.
Can we go back to something that I'm interested in?
Sure.
Because I'm not interested in this because I necessarily think you're wrong. You may well be right, man. And so I just want to start with that because I don't have a real answer to this, but I want to go back to this, the extent to which things can get better. Okay. Is not some of this the fact that, you know, and I don't mean this any sort of pie in the sky sort of way, but that in other democracies, not every other democracy, but certainly in other democracies, you're not necessarily, you know, put into not just two parties, but a presidential system that is not really representative of, you know what I mean, of everybody in the country equally because of how, you know, the Electoral College and how, like, I just think if some of those structural things were different, I think people might feel differently about their politics and about their vote.
I have two thoughts on this. One is I do think in this place, my my former, it's been a while now, my former Republican, like my small C conservative comes in, this Edmund Burke in me. That's you know, shit can get a lot worse actually. And maybe just like focusing on making things incrementally better, making incremental positive change is a safer bet than like trying to make big structural change and not seeing what the unintended consequences are going to be and not being able to predict that, we moved this thing, but then this other thing over here actually made it easier for the, you know, authoritarians to grab power, whatever. So I like that as an impulse within myself. That isn't always right, but that's just one. The structural part of this is like obviously true though. This goes back to the like kind of narrative question about America and the force for good in the world and how we're the best democracy. I mean, one of the priors that I've changed a lot is like our system is fucked actually. And when we went and tried to start Iraq, for all the horrible things about the Iraq war, shout out to the Iraqis. They've had 9 peaceful transfers of power. So they're on a longer streak than us right now. And like, what did we do with their system? We didn't give them a system with like ours. We gave them a system with more like Germany after World War II. You know, we learned things about like the nature of the system. And I do think that's right. Like I do think fundamentally that's right, but it's like, okay, well, A, how do you get the motivation to change that? And B, if you're like, let's say you're 2028, this takes us 2028, where you talk about kind of how Gaza will be a litmus test issue in 2028. This is something I really agree with you on. But let's say that person, whoever it is, has said and done the right things on Gaza and has presented themselves in a way that people believe them, that is an authentic view. And then they say, I'm going to get in there in 2029. But what I'm going to do is instead of fixing the healthcare system or dealing with inflation or dealing with your particular needs, what I really want to spend my first year on is we're going to do fundamental structural democratic change. You know, we're going to expand the Supreme Court. We're going to, you know, whatever, empower that Congress. We're going to, whatever, expand the House. Like we're going to do all these different things. I think most people will just be like, I think that's really challenging. Like somebody has to really get in there and say, I'm going to eat this one because people are going to feel like I'm out of touch. And this is some, you know, concern of the elite. Right. And so I think that's where I get kind of pessimistic.
Thing is, I don't know. The challenges feel such that I don't know that we have another option. In other words, look, I understand that the conservative instinct, and to some extent, I share it myself. Look, what I don't want, A, is for another 9/11, and B, for another 9/11 where we stand around and look at each other and say, why would someone do this to us? You know, I feel that we are doing things in the world and we are empowering things in the world and we are empowering forces in the world that endanger us and endanger humanity. If everything Barack Obama said is true about the positive aspects of America, that you know, people follow us and and all of that, what has 8 years of Trump done then? Because the inverse of that is true too. You know, what is, you know, that you know, long history that, you know, I tried to outline in an article. What did it do? What has it seeded in the world? And you don't need to believe that the United States of America is somehow a uniquely evil power to grapple with that. You understand what I'm saying? Right. Like, you don't have to, like, it doesn't require that. But I just I don't know how we have a future going like painting our entire lives. It feels like every 4 years around these presidential elections. Like it doesn't feel like a good long-term plan.
Rhodes and I talked about this last time that he was on, and I think he's really good on this, which is you can simultaneously be able to talk about the way that our role in the world has been pernicious to a certain extent, and that we need to redeem ourselves and reconsider exactly what our engagement is in other parts of the world. That doesn't mean we completely retreat, but like reconsider that, and simultaneously recognize that like there are malign forces out there that would like to take that power, and that it could get worse. And this gets back to my small c. It's like one thing. It's like, is the Chinese run world going to be better?
No.
Like ask the people in Hong Kong, right? Like ask the people in Guangzhou. You know what I mean? Like ask the Uyghurs, right? So like that complexity is there, but I don't know, man. I do think politically there's more space for kind of reconsidering this than before. I don't know. When I look back at some of my silly Republican stuff in the past, like the one thing that was the silliest was when we made fun of Obama's apology tour in 2008.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like the Senate, which was like really like 95% rah-rah America if you go look at those speeches, and 5% like, but we made some mistakes here and there, and I just think that is I think that people are looking for a different narrative, and the one that's more in touch with their experience. Okay, do you have anything else on the article before I feel like this is your third time on, or it's every 6 months, so I'm gonna get to see you again at Christmas, which is nice. I want to end with the NBA, but I feel like it's incumbent upon me to at least do one question of Woke Revisited every time you're on.
Okay, I'm
to
here
respect
for
our
it.
people.
I think
Here we
about
go.
it a lot.
Okay, last time we were on, I brought up to you white fragility, and you were like, fuck you. Everybody brings up this book. You can't make an entire movement answer for this book. And I was like, fair. Okay. So fast forward though, since then, James Tallarico has become the nominee for Senate in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Good man. I interviewed him a couple months ago. Good dude, heart in the right place.
Yeah.
And one of the was like, did anybody even read this book, White Fragility? I don't know if you read the book or not, but here's something that he said in 2020 that it's going to be on TV screens in Texas this fall. White skin gives me and every white American immunity from the virus, but we spread it wherever we go. Through our words, our actions, and our systems. We don't have to be showing systems like a white hood to be contagious. It's like, man, this is how the fascists get in charge, man. We're telling like the white, like a working class white dude in Texas.
Can we back up? No. Actually, the problem is not that. I'll tell you what the problem is.
Okay.
Don't talk about human beings as diseases.
Okay, thank you.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Just don't. Look, I bow to no one in my criticisms of white people. I don't pull any punches. I don't. But you can't talk about people as diseases. You just I just object to that. Like if it was just, us and our, that woke sort of secret society we have, where we don't let certain people in. And I'd be like, man, you can't do that. You can't talk about people. Can you explain to me, what was the circumstance in which he said that? Was he running for office?
He was in office. He was in the state legislature. Let me pull this up. This was during COVID. And he was talking about it. And he's like, one of the ways that we fight the disease is by saying Black Lives Matter.
The disease.
I mean, it's a Portlandia episode. I don't have.
Can you read that to me again? Just read it one more time for me.
Yeah, sure. White skin gives me and every white American immunity from the virus, but we spread it wherever we go. Through our words, our actions, and our systems, we don't have to be showing symptoms to be contagious. It's like a COVID metaphor about how with COVID, you should mask. Even if you're not showing symptoms, you can still spread.
White skin gives you immunity from COVID? Is that what that... I actually don't understand.
No.
Now
White
I don't
skin
understand
gives
what it
you...
means.
So there's this virus of white supremacy and racism out there. And
you're immune to it because you're white.
Correct.
That's the metaphor?
Yeah. And you could spread it. Oh, here we go.
To who though? Who are you spreading it to?
Here we go. We've got it here. We'll read it to you from the start. So that was the second tweet in the thread. The first tweet was about Ahmaud Arbery, R.I.P. And he was like, he said he's the latest American killed by the virus of racism. So racism is the virus.
Racism is the virus. Okay,
yes.
All right.
And white skin gives me and every white American immunity from the virus, but we spread it wherever we go. Through our words, our actions, and our systems. We don't have to be showing symptoms. We don't have to put on a white hood to be contagious. The only cure is diagnosing the virus within ourselves and taking dramatic actions to contain the spread. 2 weeks to stop the spread of racism. The first small step is proclaiming loudly and unequivocally that Black Lives Matter. I mean, the guy's heart's in the right place. So you hate to like dump on him, but it's like,
yeah, I mean, okay. Actually, hearing it, I understand it a little better. It's still not what I would say, but for other reasons. Certainly, I've seen in other discourse that racism is a virus. Okay, let's just start there, right? I actually think the error in that is the notion that white people are immune from it. Because I actually think one of the most, compelling aspects of, my heroes and the writers, that I've loved and that I've modeled myself after is the notion that nobody gets out of this unscathed. I mean, look, let me make this very literal for you so that it's not, just, Ta-Nehisi being nice to white people or whatever, trying to say something, nice to Tim or whatever. Although I do say nice things to Tim.
I'll take it, whatever. I can take mean things too, whatever,
Listen, I believe that if there were one singular force that I had to identify to explain how Trump becomes president and why, he's been president for 8 years, I would tell you white supremacy in a second, right? I would not tell you that white people have been immune from the effects of that. In fact, I would tell you the counter. I would tell you that actually it makes us all very, very vulnerable, that it hurts all of us ultimately. And I don't mean that symbolically. I mean that literally, literally endangers everyone. It is endangered so much. Listen, January 6th wasn't just an attempted coup. It was an attempt to overthrow the democratic, will of a lot of white people, actually. You know what I'm saying? It was like there were white cops who got beat up, and just as a matter of basic truth, I think it's important to say that.
Yeah.
For politicians, it's probably even more important to say it. Right. But I think as a basic truth, it's really important to speak in that way, not, because it's accurate first and foremost, but the damage to this democracy that's been done, which will not be healed quickly. The damage that was done by Doge, which will not, be healed quickly. Yes, white supremacy is an explanatory force for how this was able to happen. But the notion that it doesn't just, that it only, that somehow white people are immune to it is just not. I mean, I feel bad for him a little bit. I because as I think my way through it, I think I'm kind of being a little too hard on him. And I think I'm being a little too hard on him.
Are you? I think you're being a little too nice. So. I like James Salarico. It's like, man, if you're running for office, I don't there's no, your first instinct was correct, honestly. I'm sorry. You cannot tell anybody that they got a virus inside of them because of the color of their skin. You can't, even if you're doing it out of good nature. Because a lot of people, it's complicated. We're both very educated people. You're a tenured professor. We're trying to translate this. If you're just a fucking white kid whose dad beat you, and you can't get a good job, and you're like, man, this guy wants to be my representative, but he thinks I got a virus inside of me. It's just and I just think that there was too much of this kind of mindset happening, a lot of times out of good intentions, and it's not the worst people, the white supremacists are worst, but you gotta self-critique. Okay? I'm with you. I don't disagree with the critique. I don't disagree with the critique. It's not a thing I would, first of all, write, and it's certainly not a thing I would advise a politician to say. Having said that, I often find, this actually goes back to my critique of the thing. One of the privileges of any, for any sort of group is that ignorance, right? Like ignorance of other people, okay? When you are, regardless of, whether you're gay, regardless of whether you're black, regardless of whether you're a woman, you have to know the people who, rule things and run shit. You have to know their culture and their history better than they have to know yours, right?
And so what that means, when you talk about race, is white people suddenly become aware of things. You know what I mean? Like they then it's like, holy shit, this was all around me.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize this. And and then you say, okay, so how do I talk about this? And maybe you don't always have there's no guarantee you're gonna have the best people around to help you talk about it. B, you yourself, don't necessarily have, the vocabulary, to articulate it. And so I just I guess the reason why I want to be easier on him is because Tim, he was trying to figure it out.
He was trying, and we're all on a journey. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm also, trying to not have a MAGA dictatorship in the country. And it'd be nice if there'd be some people who are trying to figure it out that don't make it as easy as possible on the bad guys to hit him over the head.
What do you think he should have done? Like, how do you okay? So I just want, if you switch places with him, right? So he's figuring out, he's what do you do? Like you want to, like Ahmaud Arbery's been killed, and you are not. It is only within the recent history of your life that you have started to see these black people killed on camera, and you're shocked. You're like, oh my god, the cops do this? Like, you know what I mean? Like it blows you. So what do you like? How do you? I don't know, man. How do you speak to it, and then at the same time,
Look, when I go back, when I have to get asked about this stuff, like the thing that I always come back to, Jeb had a lot of stuff we disagreed with. So there's one thing he said that I liked, which is that the job of government is that. We're trying to make sure people have an opportunity to live a life of purpose and meaning. Mm-hmm. And like it was a good North Star. He said nobody ever lives all the way up to it, but I would frame it up like that, man. Like Ahmaud Arbery needed the chance to have a life of purpose and meaning. We failed him. We didn't protect him. And the fact that he is black contributed to that, and we got to do better. And we got to make sure that people are accountable, and we got to stop, I don't know. And we have a more of a positive aspirational way of talking about it, rather than wagging your finger at the white people who aren't doing good enough. I don't know. I mean, everybody deserves a finger wag from time to time too. So this is not like a hard and fast rule. Yeah. But I don't know. I wouldn't have talked about the virus inside their skin.
The thing is, like, one of the things that, and I'll agree with you on this, is I do think we as a movement, for those of us, within that woke movement, I still use the word, so I put myself in it.
Yeah. We got woke Bill Crystal now. You've won him over. Yeah, there's converts everywhere. We're working on some merch.
Yeah. Well, I'm here. I'm here. I lived here. I'm not gonna abandon it just because it got taken. But I do think one thing that would be more useful is when we use language that, as you and I just did, takes 5 minutes to figure out what it's actually trying to say, we probably have a problem. That's not a rule for the benefit of white people, actually. That's actually my rule as a writer. Right. Like, as a writer, when I write things and like I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Well, I got it, but it took me, then I have to rewrite. You know what I mean? Because so much of our job actually is communication. I think there were a number of us during that period who felt that it was not our job to explain things to other people. And I will say that, yes, for a lot of people, it was not your job to explain to other people. If you're a writer, if you're a politician, I'm sorry, it is. It is. That is part of your job. It is part of my job is to, and I had some conflicts about this myself, but yes, part of my job is to explain things to white people. It's not my total job, but that is part of my job. And it's actually honorable work. Because what do you want? Yeah. Do you want people to remain ignorant? Is that what we're saying now? Yeah.
And that's good. All right. Did you see Zoran today? Out there at the next rally?
I didn't.
I'm going to leave you with it. I'm going to leave people with it. He was so fucking good. The Republicans are so lucky he was born in Uganda, man. Yeah. If that guy was born in Queens, they'd be in a world of hurt. But
maybe maybe it's good he can't run though, because maybe he'd be different if he wasn't.
Maybe that's true. He was good talking about the Knicks. I don't know. You don't have any Knicks deep thoughts for me? You want to leave people with?
Nah, man. I mean, I'm happy they won. I was a New York Knicks fan before I was a New Yorker, because I was a Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston fan. I was, Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Charles Smith.
Oof, this was part of Zoran's speech. This is how, if you want to talk to a middle-aged guy and get them to feel emotions, all you do is you just name athletes, and Zoran did that. That's not the part I'm going to play, but there was a period of like 2 minutes where he was just like,
man.
and when John Starks dunked on Yao Ming, and Latrell Sprewell, and Insanity, and he's just like naming people, man. And it's like, that's good. That's a good speech. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate the time as always. We'll leave people with Zoran, and we'll see you at Christmas, all right?
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Everybody go check out his article in Vanity Fair. We'll be back on Monday with Woke Bill Crystal. See y'all then. Peace.
But there is one thing that the pundits just don't get about this team, that they just don't get about this city. It is in that 0.4% that we go to work. It is in that 0.4% that Jalen Brunson, the same guy that so many said was too small, proves that not only is he good enough, he is the new standard for greatness. It is in that 0.4% that OG Anunoby watches the ball float from the top of the arc and start running toward the basket, fingers reaching towards the heavens. It is in that 0.4% that Karl Anthony Towns finds the strength to mourn his mother and still pull in rebound after rebound, make block after block. It is in that 0.4% that Jose Alvarado shows every kid growing up in public housing that a son of Brooklyn and Queens can win for every one of the 5 boroughs. It is in that 0.4% that Mitch breaks his finger before game 1 and says, go get the tape. It's in that 0.4% that Josh Hart gets rebounds that break teams, that McCall Bridges proves he was worth every single draft pick, that Landry Shamet pulls up from downtown, that every one of these 18 players transforms the franchise, that Mike Brown keeps this team believing. Most of all, it's in that 0.4% that the Knicks do what New Yorkers have always done when we are told something is impossible. We find a way.
Are you keeping up with the algae gate? President Trump fixes the reflecting pool and a week later is green again, loaded with algae, sabotage, vandalism. I believe it. The left can't stand Trump. American greatness with his quest to make DC beautiful again. What a shame. This man is incapable of not making more swampy, dude. It's awesome. He's running around being like, this is it. We're gonna make America beautiful. We're gonna make it beautiful. And everybody was like, you know, no matter what you do, it's still going to turn green, right? Drain the swamp, baby. It's just really funny that it happened so fast. I genuinely thought this would hold out until like July 4th. You know what I mean? I thought it would at least hold out for like a month. No, it flip. Didn't even reinstall like the high-end filter Obama put in, so the algae came back days after instead of months. That's why it happened so fast. He got rid of Obama's expensive fancy filter. Respect. Yeah, we don't want none of that gay woke libtard filter, highfalutin filter. We are against Barack Obama. Bardock, no bummer. We're against it. We're against everything he's for, including the expensive filter. And
pussy too.
Yeah, and pussy too. That's right. Folks is actually woke not to enjoy a green reflective pool. That's awesome. I didn't realize the hogs were figuring out the conspiracy. They're figuring it out, folks. Here, let's start with this woke, libtarded New York Times and how they're covering it.
Wants to fix the Lincoln Memorial's reflecting pool, but it doesn't seem to be going to plan. Earlier this week, we reported that the contract to repaint and resurface the reflecting pool, which President Trump said would cost about $1.8 million, was actually going to cost about 7 times that, $13.1 million. On Tuesday morning, President Trump wrote a long Truth Social post, which calls me out by name and defends the contract, saying that...
I'll be honest, it's very funny and very apt. This is so perfectly representative of where we're at in the United States of America. Like everything that we are doing, everything that Donald Trump does turns to There is suspicion that this was also a favorable contract afforded to someone that knows someone in the administration. I think it was like a Mark Wayne Mullen friend. No bid contract, unbelievably expensive, and fails flat on its face. It was already a hollow initiative to begin with. It's shallow. It's just like you just want to make it look kind of good, you know, like everything is in America, but at least we can like engage in beautification initiatives, right? It not only falls on its face, but it falls on its face instantly. Yeah, shallow, no pun intended, but it's like so silly, like a child's brain. We're like, oh, we just make it look good for the day. Maybe it'll look good for the week. Maybe it'll look good. Why don't we do it? We should do it. It could look good.
President Trump, though, has said he wants the pool to be blue, specifically what he calls American flag blue. So they're applying basically a waterproofing compound. It's also used in swimming pools or pipes. And as part of that compound, they're adding this blue color. But some Interior Department staffers have noticed issues with the waterproof coating that's being applied to the pool. They noticed bubbles, small holes, and also inconsistent colors. So
it's so... Oh, that's so funny. This is such a perfect example, dude. This story is everything to me. Oh my God, an unbelievably stupid way to try and make things seem good. Oh, it's so perfect. Everything around us is going to and Donald Trump's like, oh, we'll just slap a coat of paint on it and it'll look good. It turns out they can't even do that successfully. They slapped a coat of paint on it and it failed.
Folks that I've talked to who know the reflecting pool well say that if you don't repair the plumbing underneath the pool, then you may end up with another big bloom of algae, which no matter what color you paint the bottom of the pool, is still going to make the pool look green. The other issue which it's
awesome. He tried to landlord special it, dude. He is such a real estate guy. Fantastic. He genuinely thought, oh, we'll just do the landlord special. Just slap a coat of paint. What do you mean? Fix it. Slap a coat of paint and it fixes itself. Well, it turns out that's not how it works. Turns out the landlord special actually sucks for the people who have to experience it.
Reported on earlier this week was questions about timing. The Trump administration justified giving this out as a no-bid contract because they said they had no time to consider other bids. President Trump said on a couple different occasions that he had personally found the contractor to do this waterproofing.
We had no time to look for other bids.
And the documents we've seen showed that on Sunday, they were 0% done with another key part of this job, which is to replace the joints between the slabs. What President Trump is saying now is he'd never worked with this company before, and he doesn't even know them. We've reached out to Atlantic Industrial Coatings, the company that's leading this work to apply waterproofing on the pool, and they've declined comment. It's a little bit ironic that the method and the contractor they chose may actually be moving so slow that they will miss their own deadline.
China props up tier 2 cities in 3 months, farms into San Francisco level tech colonies, and we can't even do a glorified swimming pool. Dude, it is so cooked. America is so bro, I swear to God, this is the most American story because Obama didn't fix the underlying infrastructure. Yeah. What's actually wrong with the reflecting pool is that it's the plumbing underneath it. Okay. The plumbing underneath it is in a state of dire disrepair. It's very costly to fix. So instead of fixing it, everyone just keeps slapping coats of paint on it. I guess Obama tried to put a new filtration system in it and it still failed. But Donald Trump didn't even try to do any of that. He just thought he could literally paint it blue and it would be fine. And now they're dumping hydrogen peroxide in the water. Y'all, not to be a huge nerd, but for the reflecting pool, you would need a minimum of about 8,000 liters of 12% hydrogen peroxide to reach the 50 parts per million concentration to kill algae. Is this what happens when you have 0 scientists in your administration? Oh my God, they're dumping hydrogen peroxide by hand, bro. Oh my God. That probably, especially because it leaks, is going to have environmental consequences as well, for the record. So it's